So you've heard of the legend, right? The SSS-Rank dungeon they call Absolutely Unbeatable. At this point, is there anyone who hasn't? Legendary parties have tried and failed one after another. Top-tier mages, rising swordsmen, it doesn't matter how high their level is. Because at the very bottom, the strongest being of our time reigns as the dungeon boss. Rumor has it the current hero's party is in there right now, but honestly, it's just an unwinnable game. The heroes reach the massive stone doors, only to realize they can't even get inside. The difficulty is way higher than any of the rumors suggested. They're stuck right at the entrance. A system warning flashes red. They don't even meet the entry requirements. Turns out, you need to be at least level 999 just to challenge this place. The party stands there in total shock. Nobody is ever going to clear a dungeon with those kinds of stats. The leader calls for a retreat. It's a lost cause. But even if they could get in, they'd have to deal with the residents first. Deep inside, the monsters live in peace. Goblins, Cerberus-like beasts, and dragons all gather around their master, ready to defend him. They swear to never let anyone reach their boss. Tenseiya looks over them with a gentle smile, thanking his subordinates for their loyalty. This is Prometheus' Twilight Tower, and its master is Tenseiya, a boss who actually protects his monsters. Then we shift to the real world, where Imamura Hitoya is walking home, thinking about how much 21st century society sucks. He's tired of everything being ranked, your school, your grades, even your company. If you're at the top, you're a god. If you're at the bottom, people treat you like garbage. And even if you manage to rank up, the difficulty just jumps to insane mode. Hitoya figures he can only survive by just accepting his place at the bottom. But looking at his life, he realizes he's never actually going to be happy. He's just so exhausted. Suddenly, a loud horn blares, snapping him out of his thoughts. He turns around just in time to see a truck barreling toward him at the crosswalk. And just like that, it's over. Hitoya wakes up in a daze, wondering where he is. He looks down and sees something that definitely isn't a human hand. He panics, staring at the white bones where his skin used to be. It's not just his hand, his entire body is skeletal. He screams in terror, realizing he's literally nothing but a pile of bones. A game-like screen pops up in front of him. He's been reincarnated as an undead level 5. He starts putting the pieces together. He definitely died back there on the crosswalk. Another notification pops up. He's currently in the F-Rank dungeon, Forest Mausoleum. A strange noise comes from the bushes nearby. Hitoya freezes, terrified of what might be lurking in the shadows. A tiny creature jumps out. It's a wolf cub, and it's only level 1. He's relieved to see it's just a little wolf, not some giant monster. He asks it nervously if it's going to eat him, but the cub just looks at him with big, curious eyes. Before he can react, the little guy pounces on him playfully. The cub curls up and falls asleep right on top of him. Hitoya sighs, realizing this little fluff ball is completely harmless. Being at the bottom of the food chain might not be so bad. Hitoya's first day, as a skeleton is interrupted by a sudden, weird sound. He sits there in the middle of the woods, still processing the fact that he's a walking anatomy lesson. He tries to look on the bright side, at least it's peaceful here. No bosses, no deadlines. But the universe clearly has other plans. A red system window glitches into existence right in front of him. Dungeon Challenger detected. He's barely had time to read it before the wolf cub starts whimpering in terror. The little guy is shaking like a leaf. Whatever is coming, it's definitely not friendly. Hidden in the brush, a challenger levels a heavy crossbow. They've found their first easy target. Hitoya scans the trees, but he's too slow. He doesn't even see the threat until it's too late. An arrow punches right through his skull. No warning, no dialogue, just instant pain. He slumps over, his hands reaching for the blue soul flame flickering inside his ribs. The cub tries to run, but the hunters aren't letting anything escape. Another arrow pins the cub to the ground. They're both stuck like bugs on a display board. Everything starts to go dark. Hitoya realizes with a shock that he's being harvested for parts. A heavy boot enters the frame, marking the arrival of the killer. A man with a massive bow stands over them, calling them nothing but easy materials. To him, they're just loot drops. As Itoya's vision blurs, his hollow eye socket focuses on the man's cold expression. The trauma triggers a deep, visceral memory, a silhouette of a man standing over him with a terrifying grin. Dark, jagged flashes of memory flood his mind. Am I going to die? He wonders. He remembers the sound of a blade and the helpless cries of a creature just like the one next to him. He suddenly snaps back to the present, gasping as he touches his intact skull. He's actually still alive. He stares at his bony hands, trembling. It wasn't just a dream. He really did die and come back as an undead once before. He pets the wolf cub's head, relieved to see the little guy is still okay for now. But the memory of that previous death won't leave him. He can still feel the cold blade. In his mind, he sees the cub pinned by an arrow again, just like it was in his past life. He remembers the sight of a knife peeling back fur, turning a living thing into a tradable item. The memory of a bloody fang being yanked out is so clear it makes his non-existent stomach turn. The challenger stood over him, holding the cub's remains like they were just trash he'd collected. And then it was Itoya's turn. The man sneered that there was a decent market for undead ribs, too. He can still hear the snap and crunch as his own bones were ripped right out of his chest. Itoya huddles on the ground, shivering as the phantom pain from his past life washes over him. Then the red system window appears again. Dungeon challenger detected. His soul flame flares with panic. More humans, he can't go through that agony again. He scrambles to his feet. He has to hide. He has to save himself and the cub before it's too late. The cub is already cowering, sensing the approach of the new hunters. Itoya scoops up the little guy and prepares to run, his skeletal limbs clattering in a desperate rush for cover. We see the tattoos on the arms of the incoming men, the mark of the Ryusizoku bandits. Two challengers, Bodo and Julden, stroll casually through the dungeon gate like they own the place. Itoya watches from the shadows, his mind reeling. This world is just like the trash game of his old life, only with real blood. The two men laugh and joke, calling the local monsters isekai trash that's only good for farming. Itoya peeks over a rock, watching the predators move closer to his hiding spot. Julden tells Bodo that this place is a gold mine for ingredients that can boost their stamina. To them, these monsters are just food. Julden laughs about their plan to kill some mobs and then spend the night in the red light district. Bodo agrees, saying he's never going to quit these easy daily hunts. Itoya huddles with the wolf cub, realizing he's stuck in a fantasy world as a low-level monster. He thinks back to the manga he's read. Usually, reincarnation comes with a cheat skill, not a skeleton's body. He's stuck as a level 5 trash mob in an F-rank dungeon, the bottom of the barrel. In this world, he's just materials to be farmed by anyone who wanders in. A shadow looms over him. He realizes he's just prey for the dungeon challengers. And the worst part is the cycle. Even if he dies, he just respawns to be killed again. He looks at the terrified cub. This is a hell where pain and death just keep repeating. He's suddenly snapped out of his thoughts by a noise. He realizes the cub has probably lived through this nightmare many times before. Bodo suddenly drops down from above, his eyes glowing with malice as he spots them. The cub lets out a yelp as they are suddenly under attack. Itoya is confused. He thought they were hidden. How did they get spotted so fast? He takes off running, carrying the level 1 cub while his level 5 status hangs over him. Bodo is surprised, calling out the weirdness of seeing an undead actually run away. Itoya doesn't care how he looks. He just wants to survive. Julden pulls back his bowstring, confident that a single shot will end the chase. Arrows whistle through the air. Hitoya's fear peaks as he wonders if he's about to die again. Despair washes over him at the thought of a never-ending loop of death. An arrow finds its mark, slamming into his skeletal frame. The cub is knocked away, rolling across the ground. They're both pinned down, helpless against the seasoned hunters. Hitoya groans, his strength fading as his bones begin to crack under the pressure. He watches the cub, feeling a deep sense of failure as it whimpers in pain. A sudden attack shatters his ribs, sending a shock of agony through his soul flame. The two hunters stand over their prey, mocking the trash mobs for being so easy to clear. Julden steps forward, his heavy boot coming down toward the injured cub. He's ready to start butchering the wolf for its parts, starting with its tiny pelt. As he prepares to strike, he doesn't notice the change in the air. Julden stops in his tracks, feeling a sudden, chilling surge of power from behind him. Hitoya's eyes glow with a brilliant blue light. He won't let them hurt the cub again. A massive burst of blue energy explodes from his chest, throwing the area into chaos. Hitoya's form begins to change, his soul flame consuming his old bones and forging something new, the legendary Tenseisha. A system alert flashes across the screen. The secret mission is triggered, and the dungeon boss begins to manifest. Undead Hitoya lies pinned to the ground by arrows, but a blue soul flame begins to overflow from his ribs. He thinks back to his previous life as Imamura Hitoya, a guy who felt like he never really mattered in the world. He's tired of being a loser. He wants to change, and a blinding light erupts from his chest. The sudden glare is too much for Bodo and Julden, who shield their eyes from the heat. A system warning pops up as the evolution begins, transforming the weak skeleton into something else entirely. His skeletal feet grow flesh and sharp, glowing blue claws. A long, draconic tail whips out as his entire body reconstructs itself into a new form. The light fades to reveal Tenseisha, looking almost human again with glowing blue eyes. Bodo stares in total shock. The trash mob just evolved right in front of his face. Julden isn't impressed. He mocks the dungeon, saying trash is still trash even if it changes its look. He tells his partner they'll just fill him with more arrows before butchering the wolf cub for parts. Tenseisha doesn't wait for them to finish talking. He lunges forward with incredible speed. In a blink, he vanishes from their sight, leaving the challengers looking at empty air. The evolved monster drops down from above, catching both humans completely off guard. Julden gets slammed into the dirt before he can even reach for another arrow. Bodo freezes, unable to process what just happened to his friend. He grits his teeth and swings his sword with everything he's got. A large chunk of the steel blade snaps off and spins through the air. The protagonist stands calmly as Bodo realizes his weapon was sliced like thin paper. The glowing circuit patterns on Tenseisha's face hum with intense energy. Bodo starts to panic. The monster's tail just shattered his steel sword without taking a scratch. The swordsman backs away, cursing under his breath. Tenseisha just stares him down. Julden scrambles to his feet and pulls back his bow, shouting that he'll finish this right now. He fires a volley of arrows aimed straight at the boss's chest. Julden expects a kill, but his expression quickly turns to confusion. Every arrow shatters against Tenseisha's body, as if they'd hit a solid brick wall. A status window reveals the terrifying reality. He's now a level dungeon boss. Tenseisha looks at them with cold, glowing eyes and tells them to never come back. Julden's arrogance is gone. He realized they're completely outmatched. They turned their attention to the massive stone gates at the dungeon's entrance to find a way to escape. Bodo exerted the power of a player and commanded the dungeon gate to close. The ground trembles as the heavy stone doors begin to swing shut. It turned out that Bodo realized the boss was too much to handle, so he just ran away and left his teammate behind as a scapegoat without doing anything special. He immediately sprinted toward the narrowing gap. Bodo quickly slipped through the exit, leaving his teammate behind. Julden desperately reaches out, begging his partner to wait for him. Bodo doesn't even look back. He's only focused on saving his own life. The archer is too slow. He gets caught right in the middle of the closing stone doors. A splatter of blood signals the end for the challenger. The massive gates fully seal, locking the dungeon off from the outside world. Tenseisha's blue eye glows intensely as the rush of the fight starts to fade. He looks down at his new hands, still breathing hard. He actually survived. Tenseisha stands over the body of the little wolf he tried so hard to protect. He calls out to it, hopping for some kind of sign that it's still alive. He worries that the creature won't be able to respawn after such a brutal attack. The thought of losing his only friend in this world fills him with dread. Suddenly, his eyes widen as he spots a faint shimmer on the ground. Beams of golden light start to erupt from the forest floor, surrounding the fallen cub. A massive flash of energy fills the clearing, signaling a successful respawn. The wolf cub leaps out from the light, barking happily as it looks around. Tenseisha's face lights up. He's incredibly relieved to see his little friend again. He lets out a long breath, thankful that the cub is safe and sound. But then he takes a good look at himself and stops cold. He realizes his body has completely changed, from the glowing blue marks to the massive tail. He's weirded out by the fact that he only has skin on his face, while the rest is just energy and bone. While he's panicking about his appearance, the cub playfully latches onto his new tail. A status window appears, confirming he is now the official dungeon boss, Tenseisha. It finally clicks. He's no longer at the bottom of the food chain in this game. He stares into space, trying to make sense of what he's become. Meanwhile, back at the Ryusizoku bandit hideout, a panicking man is shouting for attention. Bodo kneels on the floor, desperately trying to explain the secret mission he encountered in the woods. He insists the undead evolved into something they can't handle without bringing in a dragon. The Ryusizoku boss scoffs at him, drinking wine while mocking his subordinate's pathetic failure. He tells Bodo it's an embarrassment to lose to trash mobs in an F-rank dungeon. Bodo shakes in fear as he begs his leader to listen to his warning. The boss shuts him down immediately, calling him completely useless. He stands up and looms over the bandit, his single purple eye glowing with malice. He notes that the bandit has been visiting that dungeon quite a lot lately. The leader gives a simple order: wipe out every last wolf in that forest. He decides to test their new caged monster, a baby dragon called the Twin Heads. He dismisses the new boss as garbage and tells the beast to tear the entire dungeon apart. In a dark hideout, the Ryusizoku boss stands at a stone archway, giving his bandits the final order to mobilize for a new hunt. Julden, a cold-blooded challenger with a dragon tattoo, looks back with a smirk, telling his gear to make themselves useful if they want to survive. Inside a cramped iron cage, two-headed monsters known as the Twin Heads stare out with glowing eyes, waiting to be unleashed. A heavy boot slams onto the floor as the group begins their march toward the target dungeon. To a guy like Julden, the world is simple. Useless tools get scrapped, and everything else is just loot to be chopped up and sold for cash. He demands results, warning the creatures that they need to prove their worth on this hunt. Meanwhile, deep inside the forest mausoleum, Hitoya, now in his evolved form as Tenseisha, stands in awe of the place with a tiny wolf cub perched on his shoulder. The dungeon doesn't feel like a death trap. It's more like a sprawling forest of ancient ruins, stretching out the size of a soccer stadium. He looks down at the little cub, still getting used to the fact that his life as a monster isn't what he expected. Curiosity gets the better of him, and he decides to head deeper into the thicket to see what else is hiding here. The further he goes, the more it feels like pure nature, far removed from the trash game of human society. He expects to run into some kind of terrifying guardian, but the silence is almost eerie. A sharp bark suddenly breaks the quiet as another small fluffball hops out from behind a tree. Hitoya flinches, his glowing blue soul flame flickering as he realizes something else is lurking nearby. He scans the shadows, wondering if this is the part where the real fight starts. Rustling fills the air as dozens of tiny figures begin to emerge from the brush. Glowing eyes blink through the dark foliage, surrounding him in seconds. But instead of a deadly ambush, it's just more tiny wolf cubs yapping and bouncing around his feet. He can hardly believe his eyes. It's not a pack of killers, just a whole nursery of pups. More purple energy clouds puff up as even more of the little guys spawn into the forest. System windows pop up everywhere, confirming that every single one of them is only at level 1. There are dozens of them, all swarming the new dungeon boss with wagging tails. They start jumping and spinning in what looks like a welcome dance for their new protector. As he watches them play, Hitoya notices a strange glow coming from a nearby patch of trees. He pushes through the leaves and finds a cluster of massive, luminescent mushrooms lighting up the forest floor. The sight is actually pretty mystical, casting a soft green glow over everything. He hadn't expected to find something this beautiful in a place meant for farming experience. A system label appears, revealing that even the mushrooms share the same bottom-tier level 1 status as the wolves. As the pups crowd around him again, he starts to put the pieces together. He looks from the harmless plants to the playful cubs, a realization hitting him. These wolves aren't warriors. They're just as vulnerable as the vegetation they live among. It finally clicks. The only monsters in this entire S-Rank dungeon are at the absolute bottom of the food chain. About 30 tiny wolves follow him like he's their pack leader, and there isn't a single real monster in sight. He realizes that this place isn't a challenge for heroes, it's a sanctuary for the weak. He walks up to the massive dungeon gate, nodding the system requirement that allows even level 1 beginners to enter. Seeing that sign brings back the bitter memory of his past life as a skeleton, when hunters like Julden would slaughter him over and over for petty loot. Now that he has the power of a boss, he looks down at the cubs and makes a silent vow. One of the little wolves looks up at him with pure trust, having no idea how close it came to being farmed. Suddenly, the cub leaps up, catching Hitoya off guard and snapping him out of his dark thoughts. It starts nuzzling against him, its soft fur a sharp contrast to the cold life he used to lead. For the first time in either of his lives, Hitoya feels a sense of belonging. He sits down and lets the entire pack swarm him, realizing that even in a trash game of a world, there's still something worth protecting. Hitoya looks at the crowd of tiny wolves, his heart softening. In this brutal world, they're seen as nothing more than farming materials, but he refuses to let that be their fate. He stands among the fluffballs, his resolve hardening. He doesn't just want to be a boss, he wants to be their protector. Realizing that the entrance is the most dangerous spot for them, he decides it's time to move the pack. He tells the cubs to pack up and start heading back into the safety of the deep forest ruins. The wolves bark in confusion, not yet understanding the danger their new leader is sensing. He explains that if human challengers find them here, they'll be sniped and killed before they even know what's happening. Just as he's about to lead them away, a sudden glitch ripples through the air in front of his eyes. A red system warning blinks into existence. Dungeon challenger detected. Hitoya's eyes widen in shock. He wasn't expecting challengers to find the place again so soon. He looks back at the massive dungeon doors as they begin to creak open under an immense force. From the shadows beyond the gate, a pair of glowing eyes flares with predatory blue light. A command echoes through the hall, ordering a monstrous creature to fly and destroy everything in its path. Hitoya braces himself as a dark, winged shape screeches out from the ceiling of the gatehouse. It's a twin dragon, a level 51 nightmare that completely outclasses anything else in this S-Rank dungeon. The beast's 2 heads snap at the air, its presence alone enough to make the stone ground beneath it tremble. Stepping out from behind the monster is Julden, a level 35 crossbow user who's thrilled to see the rumors about a dungeon boss were true. Hitoya clenches his teeth, realizing that the bandits who slaughtered him in his past life are already back. Julden doesn't waste any time, pointing a glowing chain toward Hitoya and ordering his dragon to kill. The massive beast dives, its dark shadows engulfing the small wolves cowering on the ground. Hitoya shouts at the wolves to run back into the forest, trying his best to draw the monster's attention. He leaps into action, throwing a high kick to intercept the dragon's midair lunge. The impact sends a shockwave through his body, but he manages to stall the beast for a split second. He looks back and sees the cubs huddled together, too paralyzed by fear to even move a muscle. A wave of doubt hits him. He wonders if he can really stand against a level 51 monster and these hunters all by himself. His mind flashes back to the day he was just a weak skeleton, unable to do anything but watch the hunter's cruelty. He remembers the sight of a tiny cub pinned to the earth by an arrow, its life fatting away for a few petty experience points. The face of the man who did it, a shadowed hunter with a dragon tattoo, continues to haunt his memories. He grits his teeth, his soul flame burning brighter as he realizes that if he fails now, history will just repeat itself. A yelp from one of the wolves snaps him back to reality before the dragon can strike again. He turns just in time to see the dragon's two heads lunging again, their jaws wide and dripping with malice. The cubs cry out in terror, their high-pitched yaps echoing through the forest ruins. They scramble to get away, but there are just too many of them to move through the brush quickly. Hitoya remembers how even when he was just a pile of bones, these wolves were the only ones who showed him any kindness. That bond is the only thing that matters now, fueling a rage he didn't know a monster could feel. He turns back toward the humans, his expression turning cold and lethal. Julden just laughs, taunting him and saying the hunt is way more fun when the prey tries to run. Hitoya stands tall, glowing with blue energy as he declares that he won't let anyone target the wolves. Julden sneers, calling him feisty, and clearly having no idea of the power he's about to face. He orders the dragon to show its useful power, signaling for a lethal finishing move to end the fight. One of the dragon's heads opens its mouth wide, charging a massive sphere of crackling blue energy. A purple system notification chimes as the twin dragon's special skill is finally activated. Hitoya stares down the blast, realizing that the monster is about to unleash a devastating skill. The twin dragon unleashes its first skill, a chilling blue energy that pulses from its throat with lethal intent. A massive beam of freezing light erupts from the dragon's mouth, aimed directly at the fleeing Hitoya. Hitoya barely has time to react, his glowing eyes reflecting the blinding brilliance of the incoming attack. The flames strike the earth, and instead of burning, they erupt into jagged pillars of ice that freeze the ground solid. Hitoya realizes with a start that this isn't normal fire. It's a magical skill that defies the laws of nature. As he scrambles for a better position, the dragon's second head begins to glow with a diametrically opposed, searing heat. A second system alert blares through the air as the other head activates its own specialized offensive skill. A torrent of pure, liquid heat pours from the beast's jaws, instantly turning the snowy battlefield into a furnace. The ground where the fire lands instantly liquefies into a glowing, bubbling mess of molten stone and ash. Hitoya ducks behind a rock for cover, sweat beaded on his forehead as he feels the extreme temperature shift. He can hardly believe his eyes as he watches the very earth melt away under the intensity of the second flame. The dragon looms above like a force of nature, wielding the powers of both absolute zero and volcanic heat. Hitoya watches Julden standing calmly in the distance, beginning to understand the logic of this world's combat. He starts comparing these supernatural phenomena to the mechanics of the RPG games he used to play. He realizes that skills aren't just attacks, they are specialized abilities that define a combatant's strength. He deduces that the twin dragon is split between freezing flame and melting heat flame capabilities. The realization hits him. If the monsters have these abilities, then the humans who hunt them must be even more dangerous. He stares at Julden's silhouette, wondering what kind of deadly, hidden skills the bandit leader is keeping in reserve. A sudden spark of hope ignites in his chest. If he's now a boss, there's a chance he has a skill of his own. His eyes widen as he prepares to call upon his own hidden power, ready to turn the tide of this impossible battle. System windows start popping up out of nowhere. The protagonist can't believe his eyes. He actually has a skill. The interface confirms it. Skill activation is officially a go. Tensacia dodges through the air, wondering exactly what kind of power he's just unlocked. It's a skill called Rebirth. Basically, he can revive and steal the abilities of any challenger who fails to take him down. The realization hits him like a truck, stealing the powers of the people trying to kill him. Talk about an absolute cheat code. Julden screams at him to quit daydreaming and pay attention to the fight. The archer doesn't waste any more time and lets a volley of arrows fly. The projectiles tear through the air, aimed straight for Tensacia's head. Tensacia's eyes go wide when he notices one of the arrows just straight up vanish mid-flight. He barely manages to twist out of the way as the air around him bursts with force. Julden's got a sick grin on his face as he triggers another specialized skill. Tensacia locks in. This guy isn't just some random hunter, he's a sniper with some seriously nasty tricks up his sleeve. Another arrow blurs out of existence. Tenseiya can't even see the attack coming anymore. It's a relentless assault. He has to stay on the move or he's finished. He figures it out fast. The skill makes the arrows invisible. He just has to time his dodge for the exact moment they vanish. Fire and ice trails explode across the battlefield as he barely stays a step ahead of the sniper. Julden laughs like a maniac, taunting him to see how much longer he can keep running. Tenseiya ignores the trash talk and guns it across the open field. A pained screech rings out behind him, and Tenseiya looks back to see a major mistake. Julden's expert aim just put an arrow right into his own creature, the Twin Heads dragon. Instead of apologizing, the archer just calls it a clumsy idiot and tells it to get back up. The Twin Heads whines in pain, but Julden clearly couldn't care less about its suffering. Tenseiya can't believe what he's hearing. He asks why the guy would shoot his own ally without a second thought. Julden just scoffs. To him, monsters aren't allies, they're just disposable objects. He stands there like a shadow, explaining his cold logic. If a tool breaks, you just throw it away and get a new one. The dragon slumps to the ground, while the archer continues his rant about how everything exists only to serve humans. He lets out a loud, mocking laugh, enjoying the pain of the creature he's supposed to be leading. Tenseiya stands with his back turned, the silence speaking volumes about his disgust. It reminds him too much of the human world he left behind, a place where people are used and discarded once they're no longer useful. He remembers a time when things were different, back when he actually felt a connection to the creatures around him. The wounded dragon looks up, sensing a massive shift in the air as Tenseiya turns back around. A streak of blue lightning blurs through the battlefield, moving way faster than before. Julden's smug face turns to pure shock as he completely loses track of his target. Tenseiya is a literal bolt of blue energy now, closing the gap in the blink of an eye. He drops in from above like a nightmare, catching the archer completely off guard. His eyes are glowing with fury as he makes one thing clear: he doesn't see monsters as tools. A single, powerful strike connects right with Julden's crossbow. The weapon shatters into pieces, leaving the hunter defenseless and terrified. Tenseiya stands over him, radiating cold, blue energy. He looks down and asks the obvious question, "What now?" Julden scrambles backward, his confidence completely evaporated as he looks for any way out. In a desperate panic, he yells at the injured dragon to get up and shield their human master. Julden screams at his own monsters to move, but they aren't listening to his orders anymore. He calls them useless trash, telling them that tools who don't follow orders just end up dead and chopped for parts. But the tables have turned. The two-headed dragon is officially done taking his orders. The beast lets out a roar, its maw glowing with a lethal blue energy. Julden's face goes pale. He realizes too late that he's actually about to get taken out by the tools he just insulted. A massive beam of freezing light erupts from the monster's mouth, aimed right at its former master. Ice starts crawling up Julden's body as he curses the idea of losing to someone he considers scum. The dragon doesn't care. It's got a look in its eyes that says it's finally getting its revenge. In seconds, the arrogant hunter is turned into a human popsicle, trapped forever in a jagged pillar of ice. A system message pops up, officially declaring that the level 35 challenger has failed to clear the dungeon. Tenseiya watches the whole thing go down, only to be interrupted by another notification. His Ray birth skill is ready. It allows him to revive and steal the skills of any challenger who bites the dust in his domain. He doesn't hesitate. He hits the button and shouts for the skill to activate. The system starts sampling the frozen hunter's abilities, specifically targeting his ghost strike. A burst of blue energy swirls around Tenseiya as the process completes. He's officially stolen Julden's stealth shot. It's a pretty dark realization. His main power is literally looting the people who try to loot him. The Twin Heads dragon looks at him, clearly confused about what this weird black-armored guy is actually doing. They growl at him, staying on guard even though their old master is currently a popsicle. Tenseiya holds up a hand, telling them to just hold on for a second. He actually apologizes for scaring them, which is a pretty strange move for a dungeon boss. He makes his intentions clear. He has no interest in fighting them or turning them into tools. He admits he probably looks like a weird freak to them, but he's really just a guy in a very strange situation. Suddenly, a high-rank golden window pops into view. It's a special skill, exclusive only to the boss of the forest mausoleum. This one is called Add Dungeon Monster. Tenseiya is floored. Having one crazy skill was already a lot, but a second one. He reads the description and realizes it literally lets him draft new monsters onto his team. He looks at the system prompt with renewed focus. It asks if he wants to add the level 51 Twin Dragon to his dungeon roster. The possibilities start racing through his head. He can actually save these guys and make them part of his family. Hitoya's surprised to find he has a second exclusive boss skill called Spirit Guard's Blessing. It's a specialized ability that lets him officially add monsters to his dungeon roster. Having a pair of level 51 fire-breathing dragons on his side would be a massive power-up. But he knows that if they stay, humans will never stop coming after them. He looks at the dragons and tells them their abusive master is gone. If they want to leave the forest, they're free to go. He gives them the choice. What do they actually want to do? The dragons remember their past life, where a man treated them like nothing more than tools and ordered them to stay silent. They spent their lives locked in cages, forced to obey. They look at Hitoya, confused why this weird guy doesn't just force them into submission like everyone else. The more they stare, the more they realize they don't actually hate him. Instead of flying away, they hover right in front of him. Hitoya's shocked. They're really going to stay and become part of this dungeon with him. The two dragons nod in perfect unison. Hitoya beams. He's genuinely happy to have them on the team. He activates the skill immediately. A system alert confirms it. The twin dragons have been officially added as dungeon monsters. With the challenger count finally at 0, the dungeon environment starts to change. It turns out the rules are simple. When there are no intruders, every monster in the dungeon gets a full recovery. A sudden rustle in the trees catches Hitoya's attention. A little white paw steps out from the shadows. It's the wolf cubs, and they're rushing toward him as fast as their little legs can carry them. Hitoya kneels down with a huge smile, asking if everyone is okay. The cubs bark happily, swarming him in a giant pile of fluff. They nuzzle against his glowing soul flame, clearly relieved he's safe. Hitoya realizes that because he stood his ground, he actually managed to protect them all. He reaches out and gently pets one of the little ones. He thanks the cub for being so brave. The cub sticks its tongue out in a huge, happy expression. The whole pack starts celebrating, running around Hitoya in circles. Hitoya just sits there, taking in the moment. He remembers his past life, where he was a total loser who couldn't protect a single thing. But today is different. Everyone made it through in one piece. He's overwhelmed with relief that he actually kept his promise to keep them safe. For the first time since coming to this world, he feels like he's actually moved forward. Suddenly, one of the dragons speaks up, pointing out that while he looks human, he's definitely something else. Hitoya's eyes nearly pop out of his head. These things can actually talk. His jaw drops as the dragons casually hover above the pack of cubs. He stands on a high branch, looking out over his dungeon. The dragons begin to explain who exactly keeps coming after this place. They warn him about a group called the Dragon Raiders. In their eyes, everything is just a resource. If a monster is strong, it's a weapon. If it's weak, it's just materials. They're a brutal crew that treats dungeon creatures like property, to be sold off to the highest bidder. Hitoya realizes the twin dragons were caught and mistreated by absolute scum. The dragons explain that this forest is actually one of the Dragon Raiders' favorite places to hunt. They warn him that their leader, Chief Fucho, will definitely come back to clear the dungeon one day. Apparently, his strength is on a whole different level compared to anyone he's faced so far. Hitoya has a lot more questions, but he can see the pain in their eyes. For the dragons, these are memories they'd rather just erase and never speak of again. They share a quiet, solemn look. Hitoya thanks them for telling him anyway, realizing just how dangerous their situation is. He holds up a finger, coming up with a plan to keep everyone safe. He suggests that the monsters stay deep inside the dungeon while he acts as the lookout. Looking at the map, he sees there's only one main gate to the entire place. If he keeps watch from a tall tree, he should be able to react to any attack immediately. The dragons stay silent, letting the idea sink in. One of the little wolf cubs lets out a tiny, worried whimper. Hitoya kneels down and reassures the little guy that he'll be fine. But deep down, he can't help but feel a wave of anxiety about what's coming. He pulls up his Ray, Birth skill, which allows him to copy the abilities of anyone who fails to clear the dungeon. It's a dark reality, but the more enemies he defeats, the stronger he can become. If he manages to wipe out the dragon raiders, peaceful days might finally return to the mausoleum. He clenches his fist, determined to take it one step at a time with the strength he's gained. Suddenly, a sharp noise echoes through the forest. Everyone freezes. A red system alert blares. Dungeon challenger detected. Hitoya's heart sinks. They're already here. The massive stone gate to the dungeon slowly creaks open, revealing a dark tunnel. The sound of heavy boots hitting the stone echoes through the entrance. A man with a dragon tattoo on his chest leads the group, looking for trouble. The raiders are already complaining about Julden stealing the twin dragons and running off. Hitoya watches them from high up in a tree, counting just how many people he's up against. He's never fought this many people at once before. The mercenaries are actually laughing, placing bets on who can rack up the highest kill count today. Hitoya's eyes narrow as he watches them treat the lives of monsters like a hunting game. He won't let them turn this forest into a playground for their sick games. He realizes he's outnumbered, but he still has his own options. He watches as the raiders head deeper into the woods, completely unaware they're being hunted. He decides the best move is to cut down their fighting power right from the start. He activates Stealth Shot Ghost Strike, aiming quietly and precisely from the shadows. A blue bolt of energy strikes one of the raiders' swords, shattering the blade into pieces. Another shot flies out, hitting a quiver and snapping a dozen arrows in half. The raiders freeze in total confusion, wondering what kind of skill just hit them. One of the guys tries to act tough, telling everyone not to freak out over a low-rank dungeon. Hitoya realizes that without their weapons, they can't use any of their combat skills at all. He pauses for a second, a new strategy beginning to form in his head. Hitoya realizes a fundamental truth. In this world, human skills are just power stored within their weapons. He thinks to himself that if this is true, his job just got a whole lot easier. One of the raiders tries to activate a skill, his scythe beginning to glow with purple energy. But before he can even swing, Hitoya's spectral attack shatters the weapon's head into pieces. Hitoya watches the metal fall. It confirms his theory that the skills are tied directly to their gear. He realizes that if he just breaks their weapons, he can completely neutralize the dungeon challengers. He moves like a ghost through the trees, systematically destroying every piece of equipment in sight. The raiders start to panic, unable to see where these lightning-fast attacks are even coming from. One of them activates Vision plus 10, his eyes glowing as he finally manages to spot Hitoya in the branches. Hitoya is impressed. It seems human skills can be used for more than just brute force attacks. A swordsman yells and unleashes a wind blade skill, sending a sharp shockwave toward Hitoya's tree. Hitoya leaps into the air just in time, the gust of wind slicing through the branch he was standing on. He decides to focus on dodging their skill-based attacks until he can find another opening to strike. He lands gracefully on the forest floor, his blue soul flame flickering with intense energy. The lead raider screams at his men to stop being cowards and charge in all at once. Hitoya doesn't wait for them. He zips forward, weaving through the group like a blue blur. He intends to keep smashing every single weapon they've got left to fight with. Metal shards fly through the air as he shatters swords, clubs, and even quivers of arrows. The raiders are completely demoralized by the sheer speed and power of his assault. They finally realize they aren't fighting some low-level F-rank trash mob monster. One of the men drops his broken weapon and decides he's had enough of this dungeon. The others follow him, screaming that they're withdrawing from the dungeon immediately. They scramble toward the exit, terrified of the blue-flamed monster they left behind. Hitoya watches the system messages scroll by, listing Archer Ronso and the others as they flee. He's a bit surprised. He didn't expect them to actually give up and run away so easily. Suddenly, the system alerts him that his exclusive dungeon boss skill has activated on its own. He's not sure what's happening at first, staring at the glowing blue panels appearing before him. He sees a list of new abilities. He has acquired Wind Blade, Twist Step, and Vision +10. He realizes with a shock that he just stole the skills of the challengers who ran away. He finally connects the dots. The dungeon system considers an escape to be a failure to clear. Escaping the dungeon means you failed, and his skill copies the powers of those who fail. Which means any challenger who runs away from him just makes him even stronger. Archer Ronso yells at his fleeing companions, calling them idiots for bailing so soon. He insists that this is still just an easy F-rank dungeon, and they shouldn't be terrified. Hitoya's eyes narrow as he watches the archer prepare another arrow in his bow. The archer decides if he can't kill the boss, he'll just torch the forest to flush out materials. He activates Fireball Shot, a massive flaming arrow forming with a dangerous roar. A tiny wolf cub, frozen with fear, watches as the fireball heads straight for its hiding spot. Hitoya's expression turns cold. He's not letting that happen to his forest or his friends. He decides to try out his newly acquired Wind Blade skill for the very first time. He unleashes a powerful gust that slams into the fireball, snuffing out the flames instantly. Archer Ronso stares in absolute shock as his strongest attack is neutralized with a simple gesture. Archer Ronso screams in agony as the blowback from Hitoya's attack sends him flying across the clearing. He stares in utter disbelief, realizing Hitoya didn't just dodge. He countered using the swordsman's own Wind Blade skill. Standing tall in his human-like form, Hitoya is enveloped in a powerful swirling blue aura that crackles with stolen energy. He fixes the remaining raiders with a cold, unwavering gaze and declares that this dungeon isn't their hunting ground anymore. The dragon raiders are completely broken by his display of power, shrieking in fear as they realize they're outmatched. They drop their pride and their weapons, turning to scramble away as fast as their legs can carry them. Hitoya stands silently, watching the last of the intruders disappear into the darkness of the exit portal. A heavy silence falls over the forest as the sounds of the panicked retreat fade into the distance. The intense blue light around Hitoya begins to fade, his body returning to its calm, spectral state. He takes a moment to process everything that just happened, his glowing eyes reflecting a newfound sense of purpose. He thinks back to how it all started, when he was just a weak, fragile skeleton who couldn't defend himself at all. Back then, even a single human challenger was enough to destroy him, leaving him helpless and broken. But today was different. Even when faced with an entire group of ruthless killers, he didn't back down. A faint smile touches his face as he clenches his fist, realizing he actually succeeded in protecting everyone in the dungeon. The tiny wolf cubs and other creatures emerge from their hiding spots, gathering around their savior in the glowing forest. A system notification appears in front of him, confirming that the number of challengers in the dungeon has finally dropped to 0. Meanwhile, in the heart of the East Capital, word of the failure reaches the notorious hideout of the Dragon Raiders. Alvara, the menacing boss of the Raiders, listens with a bored expression as he's told about the group that failed to clear the F-rank dungeon. His red eyes glow with a cruel light as he dismisses the survivors, calling them useless weaklings who are nothing more than meat. Pedro Detlas, the corrupt lord of the East Capital, sits nearby and chuckles at the idea of feeding time for the failed raiders. The heavy doors to the chamber burst open as the frantic survivors rush in, their boots thudding against the stone floor. One of the raiders screams out to his boss, his voice trembling with terror as he explains that the F-rank dungeon is no longer clearable. Alvara narrows his eyes, a dangerous look crossing his face as he processes the unexpected news from his men. Inside the Dragon Raiders' hideout, Alvara stands over his men as they admit they have no way of clearing the dungeon. One survivor desperately tries to explain that the monster they fought didn't just copy their skills. He's sweating through his armor, saying the thing was juggling multiple skills like it was absolutely nothing. In his mind, he sees the humanoid monster again, convinced that this wasn't just some random beast. Alvara isn't impressed and mocks them for crawling back with excuses after a failed raid. He glares down at them, calling them nothing but worthless trash. Suddenly, a massive, dark silhouette with glowing red eyes looms behind the terrified survivors. Alvara calls out to his grand dragon, telling it that it's time for its meat. The guys realize with horror that they're the ones on the menu. Pedro Detlas watches the execution from the comfort of his couch, sipping wine like it's a theater performance. He admits the story coming out of that dungeon is pretty strange. An F-rank dungeon like the Forest Mausoleum shouldn't even have a boss, let alone one that wipes out whole teams. He tells Alvara that the whole situation definitely reeks of something fishy. He adds that their sniper and the twin dragons they captured haven't returned either. A greedy smirk creeps across Alvara's face. Rare monsters mean rare materials, and in their world, rare materials mean a massive payday. Pedro suggests Alvara should head down there and see what's going on for himself. Alvara likes the sound of that. But if he's going personally, he tells Pedro to double his cut of the profits. Meanwhile, back at the Forest Mausoleum, the sun is shining over the quiet ruins. Imamura Hitoya is just relaxing on a tree branch, taking in the peaceful atmosphere. His little companion, the wolf cub, is busy running circles on the forest floor. The furball is clearly excited about something, barking up at him. Hitoya looks down from the trees, wondering what the little guy found. He drops down to the ground to join him. The wolf cub immediately starts leading him deeper into the woods. Hitoya follows, wondering if there's something hidden further in the forest. They push through the dense overgrowth together. He notices they've wandered quite a bit further in than usual. They eventually stumble upon a cave filled with a strange, glowing green light. Hitoya recognizes the area as the spot where he found those mushrooms before. But the wolf cub seems to have spotted something much bigger this time. Hitoya's eyes go wide as he looks past the mushrooms. A massive golden gate stands right in the middle of the cave, radiating light. It's huge and completely out of place in an F-rank dungeon. He's completely stunned, wondering how a giant door just appeared out of nowhere. Even the little guy looks shocked by the discovery. Drawn to the glow, Hitoya slowly reaches his hand out. His fingers touch the surface of the golden light. The whole cave erupts in a blinding flash of energy. A system window pops up right in front of him. His identity as the dungeon boss has been verified. A glowing gold interface flickers to life before Hitoya's eyes, announcing that the dungeon rank-up system is officially online. Suddenly, a massive surge of energy erupts from the golden gate, nearly knocking him back. The gate stands tall and radiant in the middle of the bioluminescent cave, pulsing with power. Hitoya holds onto a shivering wolf cub, staring in disbelief at the source of that blinding light. As he looks closer, red error messages start glitching across the surface of the door. A warning window pops up, bluntly stating that the requirements for a dungeon rank-up haven't been met. Hitoya is caught off guard. He didn't even know ranking up was a thing, let alone that it had requirements. He realizes that he's stumbled upon a system mechanic far deeper than he initially thought. More notifications stack up on the gate, explaining that an unexplored sector is currently locked. The whole interface flickers and distorts with static as the system struggles to process the state of the dungeon. It's clear now, to open this massive door, he basically has to level up the entire dungeon first. The twin dragons swoop down from the forest canopy, drawn by the commotion. Hitoya is surprised to see them back so soon, but he's glad for the company. He turns to the bird monsters and asks if they've ever heard of a dungeon actually going up in rank. He knows this definitely isn't normal behavior for an F-rank tomb. One of the dragons chirps back with a look of pure confusion. They've never heard of such a thing. He starts to wonder what kind of insane changes would happen to their home if they actually pulled off a rank up. They all stare at the giant golden gate together, sensing the weight of the unexplored sector waiting behind it. Hitoya realizes he's standing at the entrance to a space that no living being has ever reached before. The gate begins to glow with an even more intense, blinding light. Standing there with Wolf Cub, he can't help but wonder what exactly is waiting for them on the other side. He gives the little furball a quick pat on the head, thanking him for sniffing out such a crazy find. A rainbow-colored system box appears, confirming their location in the deepest area of the forest mausoleum. Another window pops up, specifically highlighting the locked sector they just discovered. Somewhere deep in the shadows, bubbles rise as ancient mechanisms finally begin to churn. The system confirms that the seal on the first sacred ark is being released, disengaging a long-forgotten lock. A heavy, low rumbling starts to vibrate through the entire cavern. Back in the forest, Hitoya decides it's time to try and bridge the gap with his new monster companions. He asks the twin dragons if they'd be willing to finally share their names with him. The birds just stare back in silence, their eyes still full of suspicion. Hitoya quickly reassures them that they don't have to talk if they're not ready yet. He can feel the massive wall they've built around their hearts after everything they've been through. A sudden violent tremor shakes the ground, nearly knocking everyone off their feet. The twin dragons panic, instantly sensing that a gate somewhere is being forced open. Hitoya looks back as a new, high-priority system alarm blares in his mind. A red warning triangle flashes across his vision. A dungeon challenger has been detected. A massive, razor-sharp claw slams into the forest floor, effortlessly crushing the trees. Alvaro appears on the back of his black dragon, looking down with absolute disdain at the low-tier dungeon. He declares he's going to tear the whole place apart and sell off every single piece of loot he finds. The twin dragons are paralyzed with fear, realizing they're facing their worst nightmare. Hitoya's eyes go wide as he realizes this isn't just a random raider, it's the leader himself. Alvaro looms over them like a dark god, a level 66 threat ready to erase everything Hitoya has built. Hitoya grits his teeth, realizing that Alvaro is in a completely different league than any of the hunters he's managed to defeat so far. In a sudden flash of insight, he sees the trail of bodies Alvaro has left behind. If he doesn't stop this man now, the nightmare will never end. He begins to focus his blue soul flame energy, feeling the raw power of the dungeon flowing into his core. He clenched his fist as a massive burst of blue energy began to manifest, crackling with a fierce and unstable light. With a shout of defiance, Hitoya vows to put a definitive end to Alvara's bloodthirsty raid. He prepares to gamble everything on a single, massive strike, pouring every skill he's acquired into this moment. He locks eyes with the intruder, determined to take him down regardless of the level gap between them. A digital window confirms the activation of his stealth technique, Ghost Strike. In a blur of speed, Hitoya lunges forward, his body nearly invisible as he aims for a finishing blow. But Alvaro doesn't even flinch, effortlessly parrying the invisible attack with the broad side of his greatsword. Hitoya is paralyzed with shock. His ghost strike was blocked as if it were nothing more than a toy. Alvaro stares him down with a sadistic smirk, completely unimpressed by the dungeon boss's best effort. The raider leader mocks him, asking why he's bothering to sneak around in his own territory. Hitoya stands frozen as he realizes Alvaro has already seen right through his stealth. Alvaro stands tall atop his grand dragon mount, looking down at the F-rank boss with absolute contempt. From his high vantage point, he commands the entire room, his men waiting on his every word. His gaze shifts to the twin dragons, and his eyes narrow with cold irritation. He notices the subjugation collars are missing, and mockingly asks if they actually think they've been set free. A dark aura begins to pulse around him as he hoists his blade onto his shoulder. Alvaro spits out the words, declaring that tools that refuse to obey their master have no value at all. The twin dragons cower in fear, the memory of their former master's cruelty still fresh in their minds. Hitoya shouts back with everything he's got, telling Alvaro that these creatures aren't his tools. Alvaro lets out a sharp, mocking laugh, finding it hilarious that materials would try to protect tools. Despite the mockery, Hitoya doesn't back down, his blue soul flame burning brighter with every second. With a sudden, aggressive gesture, Alvara commands his men to move in for the kill. The dragon raiders lunge forward with bloodthirsty grins, ready to slaughter everything in their path. The twin dragons exchange a quick glance, realizing that they have to fight back if they want to survive. One of the birds lets out a piercing cry, charging up a brilliant ball of elemental energy. They unleash a powerful combined blast, catching the charging raiders in a storm of light and fire. Hitoya is stunned. He didn't expect the twin dragons to take the initiative and help him. The dragon raiders flinch as the sudden explosion of energy halts their charge, leaving them wide open. Hitoya realizes this is his chance to take them all out in a single sweep. He prepares to combine his wind blade with a second skill, gathering the swirling air around his hand. A new skill window flashes, curve blade. He's going to bend the trajectory of his attack to hit every target. The raiders are thrown into total chaos as Hitoya's redirected wind blades slice through their ranks like paper. Alvara's face contorts with rage as he decides to kill the traitorous twin dragons first. He commands his massive mount to lunge forward and devour the rebellious monsters. The grand dragon lunges at the birds, its massive maw snapping shut just inches from them. A wicked red light flashes from Alvara's hand as he activates a forbidden piece of gear. The twin dragons screech in agony as the dreaded ring of subjugation reappears around their necks. The system notes that the ring's power over a monster's soul is absolute and unbreakable. Alvara towers over the broken creature, reminding it that monsters have no choice but to obey humans. Alvara mocks the creature, showing off the glowing ring that grants him absolute control over the magical collar. He issues a chilling ultimatum. The next time it defies him, he'll force it to kill its other half. The twin dragon is paralyzed with fear, its eyes wide as it stares up at the monster who enslaves it. In the distance, Hitoya screams for them to get out of the way as Alvara's dragon mount prepares to strike. The bird flinches, closing its eyes in a desperate, silent prayer for its life. The dragon's massive jaws snap shut with a thunderous impact, throwing up a cloud of debris. The creature feels the hot breath of the beast and thinks it's impossible to escape such a predator. But Hitoya moves like a streak of blue lightning, snatching the bird out of the air just before the dragon's teeth can sink in. The twin dragon is in shock, unable to believe that it's actually still alive. Alvara watches them from atop his mount, his expression turning to one of pure, unadulterated annoyance. He points toward the forest, commanding his raiders to hunt them down and let no one escape. Hitoya pulls the creature close, feeling the way its small body is trembling with uncontrollable terror. He realizes that Alvara has branded this fear so deeply into the monsters that they've forgotten what it's like to be free. He grinds his teeth, promising himself that he will make things right for them. He places the twin dragons on a high branch and tells them to run as deep into the forest as possible. The birds are baffled, unable to comprehend why he would choose to face the raiders alone. Down below, the dragon raiders have already spotted them and are beginning to aim their bows. Hitoya gives them a reassuring smile, insisting that he'll be just fine on his own. He promises that he'll wait right there until the day they are truly and finally free from their shackles. The twin dragons look at their rescuer with wide eyes, their fear momentarily forgotten in the face of his kindness. Hitoya leaps from the tree, his body erupting in a fierce aura of blue soul flame as he prepares for battle. The raiders charge in with a roar, determined to claim the head of the S-Rank dungeon boss once and for all. Hitoya, not playing around anymore, his eyes glowing as he vows to end this whole mess himself. He pops his vision and detects skills, immediately tracking the 10 raiders left standing. He moves like a total ghost, cutting through the mercenaries with a mix of wind blades and ghost strikes. The guys don't even see him coming, dropping one by one as they realize their way out of their league. He stops for a second to lock onto his next target, and he's looking pretty focused. There's only one guy left, the leader Alvara, who's still chilling on top of his dragon. Alvara looks down at his dead men and just calls them useless, not caring at all that they're gone. He decides to kick things up a notch and activates a nasty skill called Devourer Boost. On his command, the Grand Dragon literally swallows one of its own soldiers to power up. Hitoya's completely floored. He can't believe this guy is actually feeding his own men to the beast. The dragon just keeps munching, snatching up another raider who definitely didn't sign up for this. Blood sprays everywhere, and the sight of it has Hitoya looking pretty sickened. The poor guy screams as he's eaten alive, while the rest of the crew watches in total shock. Hitoya, losing his mind. This leader is a complete monster for sacrificing his own people like this. With a belly full of mercenaries, the dragon's eyes turn a bright, evil red. Elvira just watches with a smirk as his pet starts to grow into something much worse. The beast starts bulking up, its muscles swelling as it gets way heavier and more aggressive. It's huge now, towering over the whole battlefield after its disturbing little snack. Hitoya can feel the pressure mounting as the Devourer boost completes the transformation. The dragon lets out a massive roar that's loud enough to shake the entire dungeon to its core. Energy starts pooling in its throat, forming a glowing sphere of pure destruction. Hitoya realizes the whole place is in trouble if that blast goes off. He knows he's gotta move fast to stop the dragon before it vaporizes everything. But honestly, he's staring up at this giant lizard wondering how he's even supposed to touch it. He starts frantically looking for a weak point as the dragon keeps charging up. Then he remembers how he freed the twin dragons and realizes that red collar is the dragon's literal leash. He charges straight at the beast, betting it all on destroying that ring of subjugation. The dragon's mouth is wide open now, and that energy ball looks like it's about to blow any second. Hitoya jumps for it, aiming a high-speed strike right at the glowing red collar. But Elvira's not having it. He swings his massive blade and blocks the hit with a huge explosion of sparks. Hitoya's stunned for a second, not expecting the leader to be that quick with such a big sword. Elvira just mocks him, telling the pesky little F-rank boss that he's not touching the collar. He stands there looking all smug, confident that he's got the whole situation under control. Hitoya doesn't let up though, his eyes still locked onto that red glowing ring. The dragon roars again, and the light from its mouth is getting blindingly bright. Hitoya knows if he doesn't break that collar, the entire dungeon is basically toast. He hones in on the collar, seeing it as the core of Elvira's power over the dragon. Elvira just glares back, keeping his guard up as he prepares to finish the fight. Hitoya tries a different approach, launching into his curved blade skill to get around Elvira's guard. But Elvira is already moving to counter, swearing he won't let anyone touch that leash. He activates his Earth-Split Quake skill, slamming his weapon down with enough force to crack the world. A massive crater opens up beneath them, sending dust and debris flying everywhere in the chaos. Elvira just laughs as the Grand Dragon charges up a final, world-ending blast. Hitoya watches in horror, realizing he's out of time to stop the explosion. The energy in the dragon's mouth reaches a critical point, ready to incinerate everything. He knows he can't hesitate, he has to make his move right now. His eyes lock onto the red collar. He just needs to combine his ghost strike with another skill to reach it. He promises himself that he will protect this dungeon and every soul within it. A sudden burst of energy interrupts the dragon, making it recoil in confusion. Elvira's eyes go wide. He didn't expect any more resistance from these materials. Hitoya looks up, stunned to see familiar faces joining the fray. It's the twin dragons, back and ready to fight for their freedom. They tell him to keep his focus on the collar while they handle the heavy lifting. The two small dragons dive-bomb the massive beast, creating a perfect opening. Elvira is fuming, insulted that a bunch of nobodies are actually standing up to him. One of the birds streaks past him, narrowly missing as it draws his attention away. He screams at them to get out of his way, refusing to believe he could lose control. Hitoya's resolve hardens, his blue eyes glowing as he finds the strength to push forward. This is it, the moment to end the nightmare Elvira brought to his home. He lunges through the air, focusing every bit of his energy into one single perfect strike. The blow connects, and the twin dragons watch as the red collar finally shatters into pieces. With the bond broken, Alvera is bucked off the dragon's head like a common fly. The grand dragon lets out a deafening roar, finally free from its magical chains. Alvara plummeted toward the ground, his reign of terror ending with a sudden drop. He reaches out in disbelief, staring at the empty space where his control used to be. He's completely losing it. No way a lowly monster actually managed to break that collar. The ring of subjugation was supposed to be the ultimate chain, unbreakable by any beast. It's a device designed to keep monsters under the absolute command of humans, no exceptions. But Hitoya didn't care about the rules. He just went straight for the kill and shattered the impossible. Now everyone's wondering just what kind of dungeon boss they're really dealing with. Alvara manages to stand, his massive sword cracked and glowing with a desperate, dark aura. He looks like a cornered animal, vowing to leave absolutely nothing left of this dungeon. Even bloodied and broken, he's still arrogant enough to think he can smash everything to bits. He swings his fractured blade one last time, pouring all his malice into the attack. Hitoya doesn't flinch, dropping from the sky like a blue comet to meet him. He thinks of the small, helpless monsters he's sworn to protect, giving him the final push he needs. He declares that the battle ends right here, right now. He slams into Alvara with a devastating blue strike, completely overwhelming the hunter's last-ditch effort. A massive explosion of blue energy ripples through the mausoleum as the dust finally begins to settle. The scene shifts as the dungeon begins to transform, vibrant green leaves and sunlight filtering through. Small, fluffy creatures pop their heads out of the tall grass, confused but safe in their new home. Hitoya takes a moment to catch his breath, his avian companions resting beside him as the adrenaline fades. Alvara is left crawling in the dirt, still referring to the monsters as nothing more than worthless material. He glares up with pure hatred, warning them never to look down on him as he faces his defeat. A colossal shadow looms over Alvara as he crawls through the dirt, his eyes wide with a new kind of fear. The grand dragon gazes down at its former master, its single red eye burning with a lifetime of resentment. It speaks of how Alvara spent his life exploiting everyone around him, treating living beings as nothing more than fuel. The dragon admits it was complicit, bound by the collar and forced to do Alvara's bidding without a choice. Now that it's free, the beast decides to take responsibility for its past by ending the source of its misery once and for all. Alvara can only scream in desperate, useless rage as the massive jaws begin to close around him. His final moment is one of pure terror, a bloody end for a man who thought he could control the world with a chain. Hitoya and the two small dragons look around, finally taking a breath now that the chaos has stopped. A system notification pops up to confirm the victory. There are officially 0 challengers left in the dungeon. Hitoya stands before the massive dragon, the dust finally settling as the fight with the dragon raiders comes to an end. The system gives him a prompt. He actually has the chance to add this level 71 grand dragon to his own forces. Hitoya looks up at the beast, his expression serious as he considers his next move. He tells the dragon he has a skill to keep it here as a permanent monster, then asks what it actually wants to do. The dragon stares down at him in silence before admitting that it wants to leave this place behind. Hitoya just smiles and gives a simple "got it," respecting the creature's wish to be free. The twin dragons are completely floored. They can't believe he's just passing up a chance to recruit such a heavy hitter. Hitoya explains that after seeing the dragon suffer under that collar, he has no interest in being another master who uses force. He knows the dragon has its own life to live, and he's not about to stand in its way. With a determined look, the dragon vows to go out and free its other comrades who are still being held captive. It remembers all the others still locked in cages, treated as nothing more than tools by the human mercenaries. The dragon reflects on its time as a slave, being chained up and treated like a beast by the raiders. It spent its life doing nothing but devouring others against its will, and now it wants to reclaim its pride as a dragon. To atone for its past, the beast takes to the sky, finally free of its chains. Hitoya and the twin dragons watch as the massive silhouette flies toward the light of the surface. It's a pretty epic sight, watching such a powerful creature finally get its dignity back as it disappears into the distance. Hitoya whispers a final thanks to the dragon as it vanishes from the mausoleum. The twin dragons stay glued to the spot, still trying to wrap their heads around the fact that it's actually gone. Hitoya turns back to the two small creatures, standing beside him with a kind look. He offers them the same choice, asking if they want to head back to the outside world as well. They hesitate, admitting that while this dungeon is a little weird, they've seen enough of the world out there. One of them says they don't actually hate it here, reminding him that he'd asked for their names earlier. They finally introduce themselves as Otter and Yata, choosing to stay by his side of their own free will. Hitoya gives them a big, happy smile, genuinely glad that they decided to trust him. Suddenly, the system starts acting up again, initializing a full dungeon rank up now that the invaders are gone. A blinding gold light erupts from the ground as the old F-rank shrine mausoleum begins its transformation. A screen confirms that the requirements have been met, and the dungeon is officially ready to evolve. Hitoya is totally shocked by the sudden turn of events, his mouth hanging open as the world pulses with energy. The system announces the change. The dungeon is ranking up and becoming the Forest Mausoleum. It also confirms the death of the threat, marking the end of the raid once and for all. The entire environment begins to crack and glow as a vibrant green energy takes over the stone walls. Just like that, the process is complete, and the dungeon is officially upgraded to E-rank. Hitoya and his companions can only shield their eyes as the world literally rebuilds itself from the ground up. The cold stone is being overtaken by massive vines and lush greenery. It's a total terrain overhaul. Rubble from the old walls falls away as the outer layers of the dungeon collapse to make room for the new forest. Hitoya looks around in awe, wondering what this rank up is actually going to mean for his home. From deep within the newly grown trees, a familiar high-pitched yapping catches his ear. The little wolf cub comes bounding out of the brush, and Hitoya is visibly relieved to see it made it through the change. The cub is practically vibrating with excitement, jumping around and barking like crazy. Hitoya admits he still doesn't speak wolf, but it's pretty clear the little guy is trying to show him something important. Hitoya looks down at the yapping cub, wondering what it's so worked up about. He's still not fluent in wolf, but he can tell the little guy is onto something big. "Lead the way," he says, following the cub into the heart of the new forest. They trek deeper into the woods, the air filled with the sounds of the cub's excited barks. Suddenly, they break into a clearing filled with glowing green mushrooms. Hitoya's eyes go wide as the mushrooms actually start picking themselves up and moving around. These things aren't just plants, they're tiny, adorable creatures with little dot eyes. The system confirms they're actually level 1 mushroom monsters, now part of his dungeon family. Hitoya is completely blindsided. He's been walking past these little guys this whole time without realizing they were alive. But his surprise is cut short when a massive glow starts radiating from between the trees up ahead. Standing right in front of him is a towering, golden archway known as the Shadow Gate. The dungeon systems announce that the gate's locks are finally disengaging, revealing an unexplored sector. Hitoya realizes this is a huge deal, a whole new part of the dungeon just unlocked because of the rank up. He gives the wolf cub a happy grin, finally catching on to what the little guy was trying to show him. He looks at all the little creatures gathered around, feeling like a real boss for the first time. Even the tiny mushrooms are hopping toward the light, clearly not afraid of what's inside. Hitoya takes a breath and asks his companions if they're really ready to see what's on the other side. Trusting his new monster friends, he reaches into the blinding white light of the gate to see what mysteries await. Hitoya thinks that if he keeps going, he might finally figure out what this place is all about. He leads the whole crew, the birds, the mushrooms, and the wolf cub, down a long set of stone stairs. When they hit the bottom, they realize they've run straight into a dead end. Wait, Hitoya notices something is buried right under the floor at the very back of the room. The mushroom monsters start hopping around like they've found something special. Suddenly, their heads transform into flat, glowing green shovels. The whole pack of mushrooms starts digging into the dirt like crazy. Hitoya is surprised they're putting in all this work just to dig something up for him. A golden light bursts from the ground as a notification screen pops up. It's a fancy treasure chest, and Hitoya realizes it's the reward for ranking up the dungeon. The system identifies it as the 6th sacred ark, appearing right in the middle of the tomb. Standing over the chest, Hitoya can't help but think how much this place feels like a real game. The bird monsters are absolutely buzzing with excitement over the loot. They ask if more of these chests will show up every time the dungeon level goes up. Hitoya thinks about it, but the prospect of more treasure doesn't just mean more money. He realizes that more loot will just draw in even more greedy challengers looking to raid them. One bird is dying to know what's inside the ark right now. The other one is a bit more worried, warning that whatever is inside could be dangerous. Hitoya thinks it over while the wolf cub rests on his head. He tells everyone to stay back a bit while he checks out the contents himself. He reaches for the lid, holding his breath as he wonders what kind of item is waiting. He flips it open, and a blinding gold flash fills the room. A floating display reveals the name of the artifact, the right hand of Prometheus. Hitoya repeats the name, shocked that he just found something that sounds so legendary. He picks up the star-shaped accessory, nodding that it looks like a ring. The system window glitters as it shows the granted effects attached to the equipment. Hitoya is blown away. This isn't just some ordinary ring. He can feel a massive amount of power radiating from the accessory as he holds it close. The birds ask if it has some kind of flashy battle power they can use to defend themselves. Hitoya looks at it, knowing the power will definitely be useful later on. But he starts to worry that using something this powerful will just drag everyone into more fights. He decides that if he can help it, he'd rather not rely on the treasure's power at all. He apologizes to the curious monsters and tells them he can't show them the effect just yet. Hitoya starts walking away while the birds watch him, wondering what he's really thinking. The bird monster thinks to itself about how many mysteries are hiding in this dungeon. It reflects on the strange, powerful boss who keeps leading them. It's unheard of for an F-rank dungeon to have a boss this strong. He was even able to shatter subjection collars that monsters aren't supposed to be able to resist. The monsters are left wondering exactly who their boss really is. Hitoya suddenly perks up, having finally figured out a way to protect the dungeon without the treasure. He turns back with a huge smile and asks the monsters if he can borrow their strength. The mushroom monsters just stare at him with a giant question mark over their heads. Hitoya tells the crew that by using the mushroom monsters' powers, they can actually change the way the dungeon works. He suggests they all work together to build a hidden hideout within the tomb. Everyone gets to work. They start digging out the floor with the mushrooms and the wolves. They even use the rubble that showed up after the rank up to reinforce the walls. Then they cover the entire entrance with plants, so it blends right into the forest. Hitoya looks absolutely pumped once everything starts coming together. It's finally done, a secret cave tucked under the roots of a massive tree. A new dungeon map is created, showing the hideout and the various gates they can use for escape. Hitoya thanks the group for all their hard work, and the monsters look genuinely happy to help. The bird monsters are already itching to see the inside of their new home. Inside, it's a solid bunker made of earth and stone that's safe from fire or weapons. Hitoya points out a hidden emergency exit that leads even deeper into the forest. He takes a second to appreciate the vibe. It's dark and a bit chilly. But somehow, it feels incredibly cozy for everyone. He reassures the wolf cub and the others that no matter what happens, they're safe here. He tells everyone to get some real rest for the night. Looking at the whole group fast asleep, Hitoya finally feels a moment of peace. He still has a lot of worries, but he wants to believe this rank up is his chance to build a real home. He reflects on how rank up used to just mean endless competition and stress in his old world. Back then, there was no end to the goals and targets people shoved at him. But maybe the rules are different in this new world. He thinks that the more he fights and levels up his skills, and the stronger he eventually becomes. That strength is actually what's going to let him keep everyone safe. He wants to protect more and more of them as time goes on. He decides it's time to head back outside, just in case any new enemies show up at the gate. Ada, the bird monster, watches him silently as he starts to move. Hitoya checks the escape tunnel one last time and confirms there are no issues. He notices Ada standing by the water, looking a bit off. He turns back, wondering what's on the bird's mind. Ada definitely looks restless, packing back and forth. "What's wrong, Ada?" he asks, noticing the bird's mood. Ada looks him straight in the eye, looking dead serious. The bird finally asks why Hitoya is doing so much for a bunch of monsters like them. "What are you really, boss?" the bird asks, clearly curious about his origins. The other bird hops in, wanting to know if he has a family and what they're like. They wonder if his family is just like him. Hitoya is taken aback by the question, struggling to find the words. He explains that his parents were just normal humans, even though he's an undead monster now. He trails off as his oldest memories start to surface. He remembers being a small, starving orphan shivering in a cardboard box. He thinks back to the moment a kind hand finally reached out to him. In a flashback, a young Imamura Hitoya looks up as his world begins to change. We see Hitoya's adoptive parents, a kind-looking couple, reassuring him that no matter what happens, he'll always be safe with them. The young Hitoya beams with joy, calling out to them as Mom and Dad. He reflects on how they welcomed him with open arms, even though they had never even seen the faces of his biological parents. As he grows into a young man, he waves goodbye to them in front of their home, but life takes a dark turn. A massive disaster suddenly hit, tearing his world apart in an instant. Hitoya's home was buried under rubble, and his adoptive parents never came back from the wreckage. Back in the present, Hitoya notes that while they didn't even look alike, the way they lived meant everything to him. He reflects on the happy times he shared with them, always hoping he could one day live with that same kind of warmth. He's been holding on to that dream this entire time, even in this new, strange world. Hitoya pets the wolf cub and reassures his monster friends that he's doing just fine now. One of the bird monsters watches him intently, still trying to wrap its head around who their boss really is. The monsters still know next to nothing about Hitoya's true level, or how he's able to break those rings of subjugation. However, seeing him sit so peacefully with the smaller creatures, they're starting to understand why he's chosen to stay in this dungeon. Meanwhile, the sun sets over the massive, high-tech capital city. Deep within the city's inner district, a massive dome houses something far more secretive. "Welcome to the East Wing of the Capital Underground Research Lab." An arrogant voice notes that receiving a formal petition from the Lord of East Capital is quite unusual. We meet an unknown researcher, a slim man with messy silver-brown hair and a lab coat, lounging on a sofa while reading the request. The request is simple: investigate the F-Rank Forest Mausoleum dungeon and then completely destroy it. He smirks, thinking it might be worth his time after all. The researcher, sporting a sharp teardrop earring, seems amused by the idea of this bizarre little F-Rank dungeon. He decides he's going to study it very thoroughly. He stands up, already making plans for his next move against Hitoya's home. Back at the Forest Mausoleum, everything seems quiet under the bright jungle sky, until now. Sudden, violent vibrations begin to rip through the air. Inside the dungeon, Hitoya and his monsters are jolted as the entire place begins to tremor. The dungeon system immediately alerts him. New challengers have been detected. A group of new challengers in heavy plate armor marches into the tomb. Their leader smirks, thinking this will be an easy clear. The monsters are terrified, realizing that a brand new faction of challengers has arrived now that the Dragon Raiders are gone. Hitoya stays perfectly calm, telling everyone it's okay and that he'll handle this himself. He charges forward with insane speed, determined to protect his home and everyone in it. The challengers are caught completely off guard as Hitoya leaps right into their midst. The invaders realize this is the boss they've heard so much about and immediately activate their skills to take him down. Hitoya notes that every single one of these 6 challengers has their own skills. The average level of intruders is definitely going up. But Hitoya isn't about to panic. He's going to take them down step by step. He prepares to win this fight so he can keep his monster family safe, activating his own devastating skill, Earthsplit Quake. Determined, Hitoya channels massive power into his glowing skeletal hand. He remembers Alvara, the boss of the Dragon Raiders, and how his power used to dominate others. He recalls the terrifying earth-rending skill that once tormented everyone who stood against it. Now, Hitoya is using that same borrowed power to defend his dungeon and his new friends. The skill fires massive shockwaves that collapse everything in their path, with its power increasing the longer it's charged. The new challengers are absolutely terrified as they recognize the skill. It's the exact same one used by Alvara himself. The lead challenger screams for everyone to dodge as the ground beneath them erupts in a violent purple glow. This is bad. Boom, a massive blast of blue energy tears through the ranks of the new challengers, sending them flying in every direction. One challenger is launched high into the air, completely losing his mind over the sheer power of the attack. He barely manages to activate his Sky Swim skill to stay airborne. Down below, the terrain is unrecognizable. Hitoya's attack has left the stone floors shattered and the intruders scrambling to find their footing. Hitoya, looking intense with his soul fire eyes, delivers a cold ultimatum. Go back to your world. From high above, we see Hitoya standing in a massive crater of his own making. He warns them that if they come back, he won't be aiming to miss. He'll be shooting to kill. The intruders have seen enough. Panicked, they scramble to open the dungeon gate, shouting for everyone to pull out immediately. One of them complains that they're leaving empty-handed and won't even get paid for this disaster of a mission. Talk about a bad day at work. As they flee, a strange little fish-like object follows close behind them. The retreating challenger seems focused only on escape. Wait, what's that? A close-up reveals the fish has mechanical, spiral-patterned eyes. Something isn't right here. Hitoya's sharp eyes catch onto it immediately. He activates his Vision +10 skill to get a better look at the intruder. He realizes the truth, it's not a creature at all. It's a high-tech, fish-shaped robot, a mobile camera. Someone is watching him. The gate slams shut as the last of the challengers escape. Hitoya realizes that clearing the dungeon wasn't their only goal this time. Silence returns to the massive, hollow entrance of the forest mausoleum. Hitoya stands alone, surrounded by the echoes of the fight. Hitoya ponders the real motive behind the attack. If they weren't after the loot, then what were those guys really after? Suddenly, his system interface blinks to life. It seems he's about to get a consolation prize for his troubles. Notification after notification pops up. Because the challengers fled, Hitoya has successfully acquired a massive haul of their skills. Multi-shot, dual break, double thrust, flying shot, and even sky swim. 6 new skills in total. Hitoya is becoming a powerhouse, even if he's still unsure about the new enemies waiting in the wings. He clenches his fist, feeling the surge of new power. He might not know what's coming, but he's slowly gaining the options he needs to survive. And with that, the chapter comes to an end. Otter and Yada swoop in, impressed with how quickly the boss finished that last fight. Hitoya waves them over, still buzzing from the victory. Then something clicks. He remembers the skills he just snatched from those challengers. He decides to test one out, and his body starts glowing with a familiar blue energy. The system chimes as Sky Swim activates, and suddenly, gravity isn't an issue anymore. Otter is stoked to have a flying boss, while Hitoya admits he just picked the skill up during the scrap. But mastering it is a whole different story. He starts wobbling in midair. He loses control and goes headfirst into the tree line. The birds dive after him, panicking as they check if he's still in one piece. He's just hanging from a branch like a bat, admitting that instant mastery might be a bit of a stretch. He gives it another go, and this time it feels right, like he's actually swimming through the air. He glides smoothly over the forest, finally getting the hang of it. While they're cruising, Hitoya asks the birds when they first started using their skills. Otta says it happened pretty much the moment they cracked out of their shells. That blows his mind. He didn't realize monsters were just born with that kind of power. They clarify that it's not everyone. The dungeon wolves, for example, don't have any skills at all. He thinks back to the fluffy little wolf cub he's been looking after. Then he wonders about the humans. Are there people born with skills too? The birds tell him no. Only monsters are born with that natural ability. For a human to use a skill, they need something called a magic tool. Hitoya realizes why those challengers were so useless after he broke their gear. It all makes sense now. Their power wasn't coming from them, it was coming from their weapons. But then the birds drop a bombshell. Those magic tools are actually made from monsters. He listens, stunned, as they explain that humans just use monsters as materials. The realization hits him hard. All those weapons he shattered, they were once living, breathing monsters. He feels a wave of guilt, realizing he's been destroying his own kind this whole time. The birds just laugh it off and call him a total softie. Ada tells him there's no point in getting depressed over it. They explain how humans use rings of subjugation to drag dungeon monsters back to their world. It's a brutal system. Captured monsters are hauled away to be processed into equipment. A magic tool is just a monster soul forced to keep serving even after death. So in their eyes, when the boss breaks a tool, he's actually liberating the spirit trapped inside. Hitoya hopes they're right, but the thought of it still weighs heavy on him. He realizes the world is a lot darker than he ever imagined. Looking down at his dungeon family, his resolve hardens. He's going to protect them with everything he's got. Meanwhile, in the East Capital, a man mocks the pathetic adventurers who failed to clear the dungeon. He's actually glad they failed. It gives him a reason to step in and play. Lord Pedro Detlas doesn't care about the lives lost. He just sees them as a waste of time. He considers himself a lucky man to have someone like this on his side. A mechanical fish blade hovers over a hand, ready for its next command. This is Elaine Chalin, the genius researcher who's about to become Hitoya's biggest nightmare. Elaine commends his little helper for a job well done. The mechanical fish glows as he gives it a little tap. He's quite pleased with the footage they managed to get. Lord Pedro Detlas is baffled, admitting even he's never seen an item like that before. The screen shows a holographic view of the dungeon gates. Elaine wraps up the recon, calling the place a bizarre little dungeon. He tells the group that their next move is pretty obvious. The Lord asks him to clarify. It's time for an on-site investigation. Elaine wants to pick that dungeon apart, inside and out. And once he's done studying it, he's going to destroy it. Back at the dungeon, Hitoya is having a blast flying around with the birds and the wolf cub. They take a breather on a branch, with Hitoya just happy to see the wolf having fun. But the chill vibes end when a system alert pops up. Dungeon challenger detected. He immediately tells everyone to hide, his eyes glowing as he prepares for a fight. He heads toward the gate, wondering what kind of trouble is showing up this time. He reaches the massive entrance, but there's only silence. He scans the area, confused. There's absolutely no one in sight. Just as he's wondering if they're hiding, a voice right behind him calls him the dungeon boss. He spins around, caught completely off guard. Bubbles start appearing in the air, rippling like water. A man swims down through the air as if he's in a pool, casually introducing himself. Hitoya can't believe it. The guy just manifested out of thin air. He floats above the ground, looking down at Hitoya with a smug grin. Hitoya tries to pull up a status window, but there's nothing, no skills, no data, nothing. He realizes he's never dealt with a challenger quite like this before. He asks the stranger who he is and what he's doing there. The guy casually adjusts his glasses and says he's here to clear the dungeon. He wants to know where the treasure is. Hitoya thinks back to the loot they found, realizing it's exactly what attracts guys like this. He knows for sure now that the treasure is the target. But Elaine clarifies that his real goal is a total clear. Hitoya never heard that term before. Elaine explains the harsh reality once a dungeon loses its treasure. Hitoya listens, a bad feeling growing in his chest. It completely vanishes from existence. A vision of his friends being erased flashes through his mind. If the dungeon goes, they all go with it. Elaine says it's just the natural order of things, literal and complete erasure. Rage boils over in Hitoya as he yells that he'll never let that happen. Elaine just smiles, like he was waiting for Hitoya to get worked up. A hand reaches out, summoning a swirl of energy. Fish-like blades zip through the air, surrounding Hitoya before he can even react. Hitoya assesses the situation, realizing he's heavily outgunned by the sheer number of flying weapons. He decides to focus on dodging while chipping away at their numbers, launching a curved energy blade in response. Elaine Chalin just smiles, finding Hitoya's predictable response quite amusing. Even more mechanical fish zip through the air, filling the space with dangerous metallic glints. The air itself begins to ripple and bubble around Elaine, as if he's standing in a pool of water. Another wave of high-speed fish blades launches forward with deadly precision. Hitoya is horrified to see that the weapons have already regenerated, rendering his previous attacks useless. Elaine stands calmly amidst the swirling metal, mocking Hitoya for his poor matchup against this particular technique. Hitoya's mind races as he tries to find a way to fight an enemy who seems completely immune to his strikes. A blinding blue flash erupts from the side of the battlefield, catching both combatants off guard. A powerful beam of energy streaks across the clearing, slicing through the mechanical swarm. Hitoya looks up, startled by the sudden and dramatic change in the tide of the battle. Ada's Hailflame skill completely encases the fish blades in a massive, jagged block of ice. The bird screeches a defiant warning, telling the researcher not to lay a single claw on its boss. Elaine laughs, recognizing the creature as a former mount once kept by the dragon raiders. Another beam of intense light slices through the air, aimed directly at the smug researcher. The bird narrowly avoids a high-speed retaliatory strike as the fight continues to escalate. Ada and Yada circle together in the sky, their eyes glowing with a protective, fierce fury. Elaine casually turns his back on the birds and begins to drift away through the air as if swimming. He stops and looks back, his analytical gaze fixed intensely on the two creatures. He notices something impossible. The rings of subjugation they were forced to wear are completely gone. He asks them point-blank how they managed to break free from their eternal service to the raiders. He finds it hilarious that these former slaves are now acting like loyal guardians for a dungeon boss. The birds screech back in defiance, showing off the marks where their chains used to be. When the birds refuse to talk, Elaine sighs and prepares to finish the job once and for all. But he suddenly senses a new, powerful threat descending toward him from above. Hitoya launches a surprise ghost strike, his blue energy flaring wildly as he attacks. Hitoya lands fiercely, as Elaine notes that the skeleton is truly capable of some scary things. Hitoya stands tall between his allies and the enemy, warning the researcher to stay far away from his friends. Elaine removes his sunglasses, deciding that both sides need some time to cool down for today. He swims back into the rippling air portal, bidding them a casual farewell until next time. Hitoya is left standing in the clearing, confused by the sudden and abrupt end to the confrontation. The dungeon system window confirms that the number of active challengers has dropped to 0. Hitoya tries to activate his innate ability to copy skills, but nothing seems to happen. The system screen delivers a shocking message. There are no skills available to acquire from that challenger. Hitoya is stunned, unable to comprehend why he can't copy any of the researcher's powerful abilities. He wonders why his primary survival mechanism and growth system has failed him this time. Normally, every enemy he defeats or drives off adds their strength to his own arsenal. Each new skill has helped him climb the dungeon's ranks and face progressively greater threats. But this mysterious man left behind nothing but questions and an uneasy, lingering silence. The system can't even scan the man's data, returning only a report of unknown status. Hitoya stares after the vanished researcher, realizing he's just met his most dangerous and unpredictable opponent yet. Elaine Chalin fades away into a swirl of rippling bubbles, vanishing completely from the forest mausoleum. Hitoya clenches his fists, his glowing blue eyes filled with a grim determination to face whatever this world throws at him. Meanwhile, at the Lord's Manor in the East Capital, a far more sinister scheme is already beginning to take shape. Elaine Chalin stands with his floating mechanical familiars, announcing that he has decided to change his immediate plans for the dungeon. Pedro Detlas, the Lord of East Capital, looks on with greedy curiosity, wondering what could have intrigued the genius researcher. Elaine smirks, his eyes glinting with a dangerous scientific curiosity, as he explains that his new objective is purely for the sake of his research. He reveals his true prize. He wants to capture the twin dragons, the rare bird-like creatures that have taken refuge in the dungeon. Pedro's eyes light up with sadistic glee, and he immediately suggests that they capture the dungeon boss for profit as well. The plump lord excitedly calculates the massive fortune, a specimen as rare as the skeleton boss would fetch on the market. He eagerly offers to supply an endless number of restraint rings and a fresh batch of personnel to ensure the capture is successful. Elaine coolly dismisses the groveling noble, warning Pedro not to get in his way or do anything to slow him down. Pedro clasps his hands in a gesture of subservient greed, assuring the researcher that everything will be handled according to his wishes. A sharp glint on a blade underscores the terrifying reality. In this alliance, Elaine's combat prowess is the ultimate guarantee. Elaine's reputation is built on legendary feats, most notably slaying the Grand Dragon that once completely annihilated the Dragon Raiders. Above them hangs the massive, mounted trophy of the beast, a silent, grim testament to the man who hunted it down. Imamura Hitoya stands guard by the sixth sacred ark, his mind racing with the challenger's words. Inside lies the right hand of Prometheus, a treasure so vital that its loss means the end of the dungeon. Hitoya knows that if this gets stolen, the sanctuary he's built for his friends will collapse into nothing. Determined, he stares at the glowing artifact. They absolutely can't let it be taken. A quick look at the dungeon's layout shows the intruders are already making their move on the gates. A red alert suddenly hijacks his vision. Dungeon challenger detected. He feels the shift in the air and immediately looks back toward the forest. The breach is confirmed at the entrance. The challengers have officially arrived. Golden beams of energy burst through the dark corridor with lethal speed. Hitoya lunges to the side, barely dodging the high-speed projectiles. Elaine Chalin floats calmly in the middle of the chamber, surrounded by his mechanical fish. Hitoya asks if he's back to try his luck with the treasure again. Elaine just chuckles, explaining that this time he's here to collect a test specimen for his research. Hitoya flinches as one of the fish-shaped weapons bolts toward him. In an instant, the tiny mechanical fish swells into a massive predator. The giant weapon slams down, intent on crushing anything in its path. Hitoya is thrown back, finding himself trapped behind a shimmering energy shield. Elaine holds up a glowing ring of subjugation and asks where the twin dragons are hiding. Hitoya's eyes go wide at the sight of the device. He recalls how these rings are used to force absolute, cruel obedience on monsters. A surge of protective rage flares from his chest, lighting up the darkness. He activates Wind Blade, swearing he'll never let his friends go through that torture again. Meanwhile, in the deep woods of the forest mausoleum, another intruder is on the prowl. Ronsaro Lopez grips his spear, nodding that everything is proceeding just as Chalin predicted. While the researcher keeps the boss occupied with the hunt for the dragons, Ronsaro plans to sneak into the hideout and grab the treasure for himself. He sticks to the shadows, moving according to the raid plan. His heavy boots move silently across the forest floor. Back at the hideout entrance, Wolf Cub trots out and senses something is wrong. The little creature sniffs the air, ears twitching at the unfamiliar scent. Ronsaro watches from the trees, looming over the unsuspecting cub. Wolf Cub turns and spots the human, letting out a terrified yelp. The little guy trembles as more forest monsters huddle together, realizing they're cornered. Tears well up in the cub's eyes as he stares at the high-level intruder. Hitoya remains locked in combat, focused entirely on the threat in front of him. A tiny paw digs into the ground as the cub prepares to bolt. Wolf Cub runs for his life, howling a desperate warning to the others. A glowing lens monitors the escape from high above. Hitoya is blasted back, crashing into a stone pillar from the force of the energy surge. Elaine floats closer, holding out a ring and stating he needs to restrain him first. Hitoya doesn't back down, launching a wind blade to cut through the incoming fish weapons. He declares he's going to smash every ring of subjugation he sees, no matter what. Elaine Chilin dismisses the boss, claiming it's impossible for a monster to break a ring of subjugation. Hitoya fires back, declaring he already shattered the Twin Dragon's rings. He reveals that he liberated the Grand Dragon from its shackles as well. He recalls the suffering those monsters endured. Watching them in pain was something he couldn't stand. Elaine is left speechless, barely able to process what he's hearing. He stares at the ring in his hand, stunned by the impossible feat. This bizarre dungeon and its mysterious boss are far beyond any of his records. He watches Hitoya closely, realizing he's looking at a biological anomaly never before seen in history. He admits to himself that the real specimen he should have been hunting was the boss all along. Hitoya charges, asking why humans would ever resort to using such cruel devices. To him, it's not just a collar, it's a tool of slavery meant to crush a monster's soul. Hitoya lashes out with a burst of blue energy, determined to destroy the ring. Elaine remains eerily calm, stating that he's fully aware of the ring's nature. He adjusts his glasses, his tone turning cold as he prepares to engage. A sharp, desperate howl suddenly cuts through the air. Hitoya freezes, recognizing the sound immediately. He realizes something terrible is happening to Wolf Cub deeper in the forest. Elaine smirks, mockingly asking if Hitoya is planning to go save his friend. Hitoya is torn, but the safety of his companions comes first. He shifts his focus and dashes away, leaving the researcher behind. Protecting his family is more important than finishing this fight. Elaine watches him go, fascinated by the boss's unique power. He decides right then that his new goal is to capture and study the boss. In the deep woods, Wolf Cub is backed into a corner, crying out in terror. The little creature tries to scramble away as a dark figure approaches. Rensaro Lopez smiles, impressed that such a small weakling could sense his presence. The level 61 spearman looms over the cub with his massive weapon. He tells the cub to feel honored to be the first test slice for his new spear. A blue explosion suddenly rocks the forest clearing. Hitoya arrives just in time, blocking the heavy strike with his own body. He realizes there was another intruder waiting in the shadows all along. Standing protectively over the crying cub, Hitoya orders the spearman to stay away. Rensaro is amused by the boss's spirit, but he's already looking for the kill. A skill notification flashes. The spearman is pulling out his high-level techniques. Hitoya tells Wolf to run, while he clashes head-on with the veteran warrior. Their weapons collide, sending sparks and shockwaves through the trees. Hitoya is forced to move at max speed to avoid the lightning-fast thrusts. He knows he has to be careful. Large-scale skills could destroy the forest or hit the other monsters. He realizes he's up against a master spearman whose technique is incredibly precise. Every strike Rensaro throws is sharp and carries an immense weight behind it. Hitoya keeps his guard up, watching for any opening in the spearman's form. But as he looks at the weapon, he senses a sickening energy radiating from the spear's blade. Somewhere in the darkness, the face of a dragon appears in a fleeting memory. A single blue eye stares out, surrounded by splatters of blood. Hitoya's face goes pale as he realizes the horrifying truth. Magic tools are created by grinding monsters down into materials. He looks at the spear in Rensaro's hands, realizing it was crafted from the remains of the great dragon he just freed. Rensaro Lopez smiles maliciously, asking if Hitoya was the one who let the dragon loose in the first place. He boasts about his new magic tool, claiming it grows stronger with every kill. The spearman mockingly thanks the boss, delighted by the fine piece of work Hitoya unintentionally provided. Hitoya is overcome with rage. He didn't save the dragon just for it to be turned into a weapon. Rensaro laughs, imagining the money, power, and pleasure he'll gain from this hunt. He swings the spear wildly, declaring that he simply can't stop the thrill of the hunt. Hitoya doesn't waste another word, lunging forward and planting a heavy fist into Rinsaro's face. The impact is massive, leaving Rinsaro stunned and gasping in shock. The boss's blow sends the hunter reeling back through the trees. Hitoya clenches his fist, remembering that the great dragon's only wish was to save its companions. He believes that destroying this tool is the only way to truly grant the dragon salvation. With fire in his eyes, he vows to shatter the spear and end its cruel cycle. He follows up with a series of powerful strikes, forcing Rinsaro onto the defensive. Rinsaro struggles to block, terrified that the boss possesses such overwhelming strength without even using a skill. Rinsaro's eyes go wide as cracks appear in his spear's energy field. Hitoya unleashes a devastating wave of power that fills the forest. Rinsaro's arrogance evaporates, replaced by the realization that he's losing. He can't believe he might fail to conquer a mere E-rank dungeon. Frantic, Rinsaro screams that it's impossible for a monster to be this strong. Hitoya watches closely as the hunter suddenly turns and flees. Rinsaro dives down through the thick canopy, desperate to find an advantage. Hitoya pursues him, realizing the path leads directly toward his friends. Rinsaro spots his target and grins. He's found the perfect prey. Wolf Cub runs for his life as Hitoya screams out in warning. The spearman plans to slaughter every weak monster in the dungeon to fuel his weapon's growth. Wolf, run! Hitoya's voice echoes through the trees as he tries to close the distance. The little cub stops in his tracks, cornered and whimpering in fear. Suddenly, Elaine Chilin appears, standing calmly in the path between the cub and the hunter. Hitoya and Rinsaro both freeze, shocked by the researcher's sudden intervention. Hitoya is confused by the presence of another challenger, while Rinsaro prepares to strike. Rinsaro charges Elaine, telling him he should feel honored to be sacrificed for his spear's power. A massive shockwave ripples out as their powers collide. One of Elaine's mechanical fish snaps at the spear, easily neutralizing the attack as the wolf cub cowers behind him. Elaine remains perfectly composed, his floating fish tools circling him like silent guardians. Hitoya is stunned. He can't understand why a human conqueror would step in to protect a monster. Rinsaro snarls at Elaine, demanding to know why he's getting in his way. From high above, the forest canopy hides the two challengers as they face off. Elaine looks down at the trembling wolf cub, telling Rinsaro that hunting weak monsters is a meaningless endeavor. Elaine Chilin smiles dismissively, calling Rinsaro dead weight and telling him he should just go home. Offended, Rinsaro Lopez snarls at the suggestion that he is somehow inferior to a monster. Elaine watches calmly as the cub runs, nodding that the prideful spearman would never listen to reason. Elaine's intentions become clear. He plans to use Rinsaro for his own research, convinced the hunter is outmatched. Hitoya clutches the wolf cub as Elaine declares that he's canceling the dungeon conquest to focus on studying the boss. Rinsaro points his weapon at Elaine, demanding he take back his dismissive words. The hunter's aura explodes with a foul purple light as he vows to turn Elaine into nourishment for his spear. Rinsaro lunges forward with a strike aimed at Elaine, while Hitoya watches the infighting from below. Elaine turns to the boss with a casual "oh well," nodding that he and his colleague have had a falling out. To Hitoya's surprise, the researcher asks if they should join forces to fight the spearman. Hitoya is completely taken aback, his eyes wide as he processes the absurd proposal from the conqueror. Elaine reiterates his decision to stop the conquest, standing amidst his floating mechanical fish. Still holding the cub, Hitoya tries to understand the meaning behind this bizarre turn of events. He finds it hard to believe that the very conquerors who attacked him are now at each other's throats. Rinsaro's pride is wounded. He can't accept that he's considered less than a low-rank boss. He lashes out with his spear, calling out to the dungeon boss in his blind rage. Rinsaro screams that he will defeat everyone here to prove his undeniable strength. A school of Elaine's mechanical fish tools swarms through the air to intercept the coming attack. The forest erupts in a clash of purple energy and mechanical metal as the two humans fight. Elaine floats gracefully above the destruction, looking down with cold indifference. Hitoya is stunned to realize that Elaine's school of tools actually served as a shield to protect him. Driven by manic laughter, Rinsoro promises to hunt down both the boss and the researcher together. Rinsoro triggers a dark skill, Devour multiplication, and a wave of destructive energy consumes the area. Hitoya's blood runs cold as he recognizes the familiar power. It is a skill stolen from the great dragon. Imamura Hitoya is devastated. He realizes the weapon in front of him is made from the remains of the very dragon he tried to save. Rinsoro Lopez just laughs, showing off the spear's morbid power. He claims the blade only gets stronger the more lives it takes. He's got a manic look in his eyes as he promises to let the spear drink Hitoya's blood next. Hitoya doesn't wait for another word. He lunges forward in a streak of blue energy, leaving Elaine Chalin behind in the distance. His eyes glow with a cold soul fire. He vows that he won't let the dragon's remains be used for more slaughter. He drops from the air like a hammer. Rinsoro braces his weapon and dares the boss to come closer. Hitoya's strike is absolute. He shatters the great dragon's spear into countless pieces. Alvara can only watch in horror as his legendary weapon is reduced to scrap metal in a single second. The impact leaves the spearman reeling, his mind struggling to process the total destruction of his spear. The jagged tip of the spear falls and embeds itself in the dirt as Hitoya lands gracefully. Hitoya floats through the air, surrounded by the swirling mana of the dungeon. He looks down at the broken remains of his opponent's pride. The skeleton catches a fragment of the dragon-bone spear midair. From the shadows of the forest, the researcher watches the scene unfold with intense interest. Alvara's hand trembles as he grips what's left of his broken handle. He's completely humiliated, unable to accept that an E-rank monster just broke him. But Alvara has one desperate trick left up his sleeve. He hurls several metallic discs, the rings of subjugation, straight at Hitoya. He screams for the monster to grovel as the rings spin through the air. The magical shackles lock on, surrounding Hitoya in a cage of red light. Alvara gloats, already planning to turn Hitoya into crafting materials once he's enslaved. Hitoya doesn't move, his blue soul flame burning brighter than ever. He lunged his tail straight at the magic ring. With a gentle flick, the unbreakable shackle shattered into a million pieces. Alvara freezes as he witnesses the impossible. The system's law has been broken. His smug grin vanishes, replaced by cold, sweating terror. Hitoya lunges forward, finishing the fight before Alvara can even blink. A massive impact sends the spearman flying back through the trees. He crashes into the ground with a violent thud. The one-sprout Alvara lies broken and defeated against a tree, his armor smoking. The researcher calmly walks out from behind the trees, his white coat fluttering. He adjusts his glasses, staring at the spot where the ring was destroyed. Hitoya turns to face him, still on guard. The silver-haired man smiles, calling Hitoya truly amazing for breaking the shackle. Hitoya asks him what his actual objective is, sensing this guy is more dangerous than the spearman. He remembers how the researcher helped capture his friends. "Wasn't your goal to conquer this dungeon?" Hitoya demands. The researcher shrugs, saying that's just the job he was paid for. He explains that his commission was to investigate the mausoleum and capture the boss. However, he has a different, much more personal objective. He reveals that his research has a very specific theme. The researcher slowly pulls back his collar with both hands. He wants to find a way to remove his own shackles. Hitoya's jaw drops as he sees what's hidden beneath the man's clothes. There, embedded directly into his neck, is a glowing red ring of subjugation. Hitoya is stunned. He's never seen a human enslaved like a monster before. The magical ring pulses with a sinister red light around the man's throat. Hitoya stares in disbelief, wondering why a conqueror is being controlled by his own kind's chains. The researcher explains his origin. He's a hybrid born between a human and a monster. He belongs to both worlds, yet he's accepted by neither. He admits he was hired to conquer the dungeon and capture Hitoya, but his plans have changed. His real goal is to find a way to break the ring of subjugation embedded in his own neck. He tells Hitoya he's a precious existence because he's the only one who can destroy those shackles. He offers to handle the groundwork on the outside to keep the dungeon safe from other humans. He's even willing to fake the mission results and pretend the conquest request never happened. No killing monsters, no conquering, just a quiet deal between two outcasts. He promises to keep his word if Hitoya allows him to return later for investigation. The system confirms that the opponent is someone the ring cannot control. As the boss, Hitoya possesses the unique power to shatter the very laws of subjugation. And he will fiercely resist anyone who tries to put a collar on him or his family. The researcher thinks that if he can gain Hitoya's trust and use him as material, he might finally be free. But Ada swoops in, screeching that the man can't be trusted. The bird warns Hitoya that this man is the same one who attacked their friend Yata. The silver-haired man offers a shallow apology for what happened back then. He says he'd be happy if their next meeting didn't immediately turn into a battle. As he turns to leave, he feels he's finally found a way to destroy his neck ring. But in the shadows, he's already planning to catch the skeleton off guard and finish him off. Otter is frantic, asking Hitoya if it's really okay to let an enemy like that just walk away. Hitoya remains silent, wondering if letting him return to the surface is a massive mistake. He keeps dwelling on the man's story about being a hybrid born between two worlds. He looks at the researcher with a new sense of curiosity. Hitoya asks if there are other hybrids like him living in the outside world. The researcher's expression goes cold as he confirms that there are many more. He explains a dark truth: hybrids are produced as disposable tools and slaves. The reality of the world outside hits Hitoya like a ton of bricks. While humans live in the light, these beings are treated like trash in the dark. As the man walks away, Hitoya calls out for him to wait. He reaches back and grabs one of the glowing crystalline spikes on his own tail. He grunts in effort, starting to pull on the bone with everything he's got. The researcher and Ada both freeze in absolute shock as they watch him. Hitoya explains that magic tools harbor the power of the monsters used as their material. If the goal is to break the rings, then he's the perfect source. He shouts that if the man uses his tail as material, he can definitely create the tool he needs. Sweat beads on his face as he endures the soul-crushing pain. With a sickening crack, he snaps the spike right off his skeletal body. Panting, he holds out the glowing crystal and tells the man to use it. The researcher is stunned, asking why Hitoya would sacrifice a part of himself for a stranger. Hitoya explains that this power is necessary for everyone suffering in the outside world too. The man asks why he's helping when it has absolutely nothing to do with him. Hitoya looks back with a soft, human-like gaze. He just couldn't turn a blind eye to someone's pain. The researcher stares at the glowing crystalline spike Hitoya just handed him. He holds the fragment of Hitoya's own body in his palm, his expression unreadable as he takes in the magnitude of the gift. He admits that in all his years of study, he's never encountered anyone quite like the skeleton boss. Softening his tone, the researcher offers a sincere thank you as Hitoya gives him a gentle smile. Ada watches the exchange with a skeptical glare, still not ready to forgive the man. The bird grumbles that he still doesn't trust the silver-haired man, but Hitoya tells him it's okay to feel that way. Ada huffs and calls Hitoya a softie for being so quick to help a former enemy. The researcher stands composed, his floating fish familiars bobbing in the air around him. He finds it fascinating that a being like Hitoya can possess such genuine kindness in a world of subjugation. As a token of his gratitude, he decides to explain the true mystery behind unpredictable dungeons. He notes that while this dungeon recently climbed from F-rank to E-rank, that's just the start. In all of recorded history, only 7 dungeons have ever been known to rank up like this one. Even more significant is the fact that none of those 7 dungeons still exist in the present day. He explains that just as dungeons are categorized by rank, humans are measured by levels. He pulls up his own status window, showing that he is a level 89 magician named Align Turin. Hitoya and Atta listen, as he reveals that every dungeon has a minimum level requirement for entry. For an F-rank dungeon, a level 5 conqueror can enter, while a level 4 would be blocked by the system. The world literalizes these levels, creating barriers for anyone who doesn't meet the harsh requirements. A knight stands before a massive portal, a red warning sign flashing because his level is insufficient to enter. The researcher points out that the highest tier, SSS-Rank, has a conquest condition of level 999. In all of history, there has never been a single person who managed to reach that impossible peak. Because of this, no one has ever been able to even challenge an SSS-Rank dungeon. He lays out the potential future if this unpredictable dungeon keeps ranking up, and manages to climb 7 more stages to reach that legendary SSS rank. It would become an absolute dungeon that no human could ever hope to conquer. Hitoya is stunned by the revelation, realizing he could create a permanent sanctuary for his people. But the researcher warns that ranking up will naturally attract increasingly powerful enemies. As the dungeon gets stronger, higher-level conquerors will be drawn to the challenge of breaking it. Hitoya looks at his hands, his mind racing with the possibility of reaching that unconquerable peak. Suddenly, a massive system message flickers into existence. Dungeon rank-up system reload initiated. Hitoya and Atta look up in shock as the very atmosphere of the dungeon begins to crackle with energy. A pillar of light erupts toward the ceiling, signaling a massive shift within the mausoleum. The researcher chuckles, finding the inner workings of the dungeon rank-up system quite impressive. He watches with keen interest, his analytical mind already processing the new data. Hitoya asks what that massive flare of light could possibly be. He stares upward, his eyes wide as the light begins to solidify into a physical form. High above, a giant golden door manifests on the ceiling, pulsating with ancient magic. It looks like a gateway to another realm, suspended right in the middle of the dungeon's sky. Hitoya can hardly believe his eyes as he asks the silver-haired man what that door represents. A new notification appears, stating that the gate to an unexplored area is currently locked. The golden door glows with a brilliant, inviting light, overshadowing everything below. The researcher explains that beyond the gate lies the treasure, the true heart of the dungeon itself. Hitoya is taken aback, the word treasure echoing in his mind as a blue bolt of energy crackles between him and the ceiling door. The researcher begins to elaborate, explaining that high-rank dungeons are naturally difficult to conquer, but for a specific reason. He gestures toward an image of a towering, jagged dungeon mountain, where a group of exhausted and wounded conquerors are retreating from the gate. Hitoya and Atta look confused, trying to grasp how the sheer quantity of treasure correlates to the dungeon's survival. A simple glowing tower represents a dungeon, as the researcher explains that conquering a dungeon means stealing every single treasure inside. The more treasures a dungeon houses, the more trials a human must overcome, making a complete conquest nearly impossible. He adds that a high number of treasures acts as a stabilizer. As long as one remains, the dungeon won't collapse and vanish. Hitoya and Atta realize that for their home, hoarding as many treasures as possible is actually the best defensive strategy. Hitoya looks up as a new system interface blinks into existence, glowing with a golden light against the dim dungeon air. The notification delivers a harsh reality. The lock on the ceiling gate will only release once the dungeon ranks up to A rank. Hitoya is visibly shaken, his eyes wide as he realizes the massive gap between his current power and the requirement. Their home is currently only E rank, meaning they must successfully rank up 4 more times to even touch the new door. Another screen appears, detailing the forest mausoleum and showing that the system is currently counting failed conquerors. The researcher points out that the key to ranking up is the number of people who fail to conquer the dungeon. He recites precise data from past dungeons, noting that 3 others reached A rank only after nearly 10,000 conquerors failed. Hitoya is impressed by the man's flawless memory, even as the researcher factors in those who died without leaving a record. The final estimate is staggering. 10,000 people must fall before the dungeon can reach A rank. Behind them, a system window coldly confirms that the rank-up conditions are currently unachieved. Otta looks small and overwhelmed, sweating as he imagines the endless years it would take to fight 10,000 humans. The researcher looks on with a somber expression, acknowledging that the path to A rank is indeed a long and grueling one. The image of a triumphant human hero, standing over piles of dead monsters, serves as a reminder that this world belongs to the conquerors. The reality is cruel and unreasonable for any monster, leaving the dream of an SSS-Rank sanctuary feeling like a pipe dream. Hitoya stares ahead, the weight of the task settling on his shoulders as he considers the future of his dungeon. He looks back on the few dozen challengers he's faced so far, realizing he has only just begun a journey of 10,000 battles. 10,000 kills is a crazy high bar to clear just to rank up the dungeon. Hitoya clenches his fist. He doesn't want to turn his home into a slaughterhouse. He thinks back to the life he lost and the people he'll never see again. But now he has a new family, and he's determined to find a way to protect them all. He decides right then that he won't let despair get the better of him. Standing with Otta, his resolve is written all over his face. The researcher watches, intrigued by a guy who refuses to let reality break him. He realizes Hitoya is exactly the kind of person he's been looking for. He lets slip that there's actually a loophole to the A rank requirement. It's not an easy path, but it's a massive shortcut if they can pull it off. The silver-haired man starts calling back his mechanical fish swarming the area. He leaves Alvara broken in the dirt as he prepares to head out. The researcher promises to go back and officially withdraw the hit on the dungeon. Hitoya smiles, grateful to finally have an ally in this world. Fast forward 7 days later to the human eastern capital. A hand slams a set of papers down on a desk in a fit of rage. Alvara is fuming, feeling like a total failure after getting kicked out of an E-rank dungeon. Lord Pedro Detlas tries to play the diplomat and tells him to cool off. Alvara isn't interested in being calm. He wants compensation for his destroyed gear. He reveals he knows all about the Lord's shady embezzlement of bandit loot. He threatens to leak the scandal unless the noble pays up for his silence. Pedro sighs and starts pouring some wine, acting like he's ready to negotiate. The Lord hands over a glass with a polite, fake smile on his face. Thinking he's finally got the upper hand, Alvara takes it with a smug grin. They clink glasses together in a toast to their new deal. Alvara doesn't hesitate and knocks the drink back immediately. He starts bragging about all the high-end magic tools he's going to buy. He's already planning his return to watch the dungeon collapse for real this time. Suddenly his grip fails, and the glass shatters on the floor. His face turns a sickly purple as his lungs completely lock up. He falls to the carpet, clutching his throat while staring up at his betrayer. Pedro looks down at him with a cold, mocking expression. Alvara chokes, unable to believe he fell for such an obvious trap. A pool of blood begins to spread across the expensive floor. The mercenary lies still, another loose end tied up by the corrupt noble. Pedro's only concern is that the new poison is going to be a pain to clean out of the rug. Out of the blue, a voice tells him that someone saw the whole thing. The researcher materializes out of thin air right behind the Lord's chair. He offers a terrifying smile and asks if they should have a little talk of their own. The researcher stands in a room where Alvara lies in a pool of blood, addressing a cold-eyed Pedro Detlas. Pedro notes that purging rebellious elements is just a common occurrence in their world. The researcher smiles, echoing that it is indeed a very common thing. Pedro wonders what kind of discussion the silver-haired investigator really wants to have. The researcher points right at him, getting straight to the point about the secrets he's hiding from the capital. Pedro tries to act confused, but his mask of lordship is already starting to slip. The investigator drops the first number, 540 kilograms of narcotics hidden from the government. Then comes the next, over 2,000 arrests that Pedro conveniently ignored for his own gain. The total scale of the illicit market comes out to a staggering 3.5 billion. Golden coins rain down as the researcher asks if Pedro knows exactly where all that money went. Pedro is terrified, wondering how any outsider could possibly know those guarded secrets. He claims that in his 30 years as Lord, his falsified records have never even been questioned. The researcher stands tall, looking down on the corrupt official with cold indifference. He explains that he never forgets a single thing he sees, hears, or even tastes. He reveals that he is an entity born from the rift, which is why the capital keeps him alive. He activates his innate skill, perfect memory, as his eyes glow with the flow of data. A digital interface fills his mind as he cross-references every number and record in an instant. Pedro realizes he isn't dealing with a simple official, but a genuine monster in human form. The researcher presents an official notice of disposition from the world government. The notice is blunt. The capital has absolutely no more use for a man like Pedro. He adds that while this level of fraud is small, the government loves a good excuse for a purge. A dark vision of gallows and grim reapers looms over Pedro as his fate is sealed. The bloodstained notice falls to the floor as his legacy ends right then and there. The researcher walks away, leaving the disgraced and broken lord in his own shadow. At the forest mausoleum, things are finally starting to settle down for the dungeon's inhabitants. Hitoya, in his new humanoid form, looks guilty as he listens to a stern lecture. Ada scolds him, telling him to never offer his own body as material to a conqueror again. Surrounded by mushroom monsters and other creatures, Hitoya offers a sincere apology to everyone. Ada looks away, trying her best to hide how much she was actually worried about him. She blushes and snaps, insisting she definitely wasn't worried about the boss at all. Hitoya is just happy to see all the creatures in the dungeon finally getting along. He shifts the focus to their next move and how they'll grow the dungeon's strength. His ultimate goal is to reach SSS rank and become completely untouchable to any invader. To get there, they need to induce 10,000 conquest failures from invading adventurers. Ada listens intently as he breaks down the specific mechanics of the dungeon system. He points out that conquerors only technically succeed if they leave with some kind of loot. So the path to a faster rank up is actually quite simple. They just need to make sure the adventurers escape with absolutely nothing in their pockets. Or, as a last resort, they simply don't make it out of the dungeon alive. Hitoya is genuinely relieved to know that killing isn't their only way to level up. Ada warns him that grinding out 10,000 failures is going to be a massive issue. Hitoya knows that the more time it takes, the higher the risk of a complete conquest becomes. Hitoya realizes that everything in this world, skills, dungeons, and level-ups, functions exactly like a game. He wonders if there are any exploits or shortcuts he can use to rank up his dungeon as fast as possible. He decides he needs to learn much more about the mechanics governing this reality. He considers seeking out the silver-haired conqueror again to pry for information. Meanwhile, high above the clouds, the researcher stands atop a massive flying whale. He reflects on how he used the chaos to secretly cancel the official conquest request for the forest. His expression remains cold and calculated. He knows the world's structure itself is the true enemy of all dungeon monsters. The entire system is built on humans thriving by exploiting creatures from the rifts. The whale approaches a colossal, high-tech structure, the capital of the world government. In his hand, he tightly grips the glowing shard Hitoya entrusted to him. He vows to repay his debt to the monster who showed him unexpected mercy. He truly hopes that Hitoya becomes the catalyst needed to shatter the current world order. He closes his eyes, centering himself for the dangerous game ahead. He begins drafting a plan to help the dungeon reach A rank in record time. The scene shifts to a rowdy tavern lit by a massive wooden chandelier. This is the Conqueror Guild tavern in the capital's District 5. A man with spiky silver hair and red tattoos sits alone, bored out of his mind. A drunk mercenary leans in, claiming he has a story that will actually be worth hearing. He brings up rumors about the F-rank dungeon that used to belong to the bandits. He laughs about how even a veteran like Alvara was defeated there. He whispers that something truly terrifying has taken over the forest. Rumor has it a new boss has appeared, one with 10 tails that look like massive swords. Its body is as massive as a tower, with fangs longer than arrows. The drunk man admits he's never even heard of a monster that sounds like this one. The tattooed warrior, Kuga Ashura, finally shows a spark of interest in the anomalous boss. The mercenary adds that the dungeon has apparently ranked up recently. Ashura immediately asks for the exact coordinates of the place. The man stammers, trying to remember the directions through his drunken haze. Suddenly, a blinding red flash cuts through the air. Ashura stands up, a dangerous red energy crackling around his head. The massive chandelier is sliced clean in half, crashing toward the floor. The entire tavern falls silent in absolute terror as the room fills with dust. Ashura stares the man down, coldly asking if he's finally sobered up. He turns his back, revealing the distinctive white cloak of a high-ranking official. The crowd recognizes the crest instantly, their fear reaching a breaking point. This is Kuga Ashura, the capital's second subjugation officer. He smirks, thinking that an unknown dungeon might actually be a fun place to hunt. Back at the capital's underground research lab, the researcher is hard at work. He analyzes the shard Hitoya gave him, surrounded by data screens. He notes that his research on a way to remove the ring of subjugation is finally moving forward. He envisions Hitoya's power, realizing the monster is the key to his own freedom. The researcher monitors the dungeon's status from a distance, checking the current conquest progress. The screen displays a terrifying warning. The forest mausoleum is being invaded by Kuga Ashura, a level 120 swordsman. The researcher's eyes go wide with pure shock as he reads the name on the terminal. The data doesn't lie. A top-tier conqueror has targeted the low-ranked dungeon. In a vision of the immediate future, Ashura rides his massive red dragon, looking like a harbinger of doom. The researcher realizes that if it's Ashura, the dungeon stands no chance of survival. It will be completely annihilated. Inside the forest mausoleum, Hitoya and Ata feel a sudden, heavy pressure in the air. Hitoya senses the intrusion immediately. A powerful conqueror has arrived. Standing in a clearing, Kuga Ashura looks bored, his white cloak fluttering as he surveys his new hunting ground. He rests his hand on the hilt of his red katana, ready to draw it at a moment's notice. Hitoya watches from the shadows, wondering who this delinquent samurai could possibly be. Ashura's gaze is sharp and predatory, even under the shadow of his spiky silver hair. Suddenly, Ashura moves with blinding speed, forcing Hitoya to react. A thin red line of energy slices through the air, carving deep into a massive tree trunk. The tree groans and begins to split apart from the sheer force of the single, casual strike. Hitoya is stunned that a human could cut down such a massive obstacle with so little effort. He stares at the intruder, desperately trying to understand what his objective might be. Ashura stares back, his expression unreadable and cold. Hitoya checks the status window, but the levels and stats seem to be completely bugged out by the man's power. Ashura grins, noting that the rumors about an anomalous dungeon boss weren't exaggerated. His tattoos glow bright red as his excitement builds. He finally found something worth fighting. "I'm sick and tired of hunting weaklings," he says with a crazed look. "Let's kill each other." Hitoya stands his ground, though he's clearly outmatched in raw level. Ata chirps bravely, promising to back up her boss in this life-or-death struggle. Ashura looks at the small bird with pure disdain, calling her a small fry. He draws his glowing red blade, warning Hitoya not to let anyone get in the way of their fight. Hitoya knows this is a level of danger he's never faced before, and the outcome is a total mystery. He turns to Ata and commands her to get back to the safety of the deeper forest. He gives her a gentle, reassuring smile, telling her to stay by Yata's side instead of risking her life here. Ata hesitates but eventually agrees, trusting Hitoya's judgment. With Ata gone, Hitoya lunges forward and activates his wind blade skill. Multiple green arcs of pressurized wind fly toward the silver-haired swordsman. Ashura effortlessly dodges the attack, his body becoming a blur of speed and precision. He laughs out loud, genuinely enjoying the sensation of a real battle. Ashura retaliates with a high-speed strike of his own, red energy erupting from his sword. Hitoya is pummeled by the sheer force of the red slashes, barely able to keep up. Ashura praises Hitoya's reflexes, his voice dripping with sadistic glee. Hitoya's mind races as he realizes that even a stray flying slash could reach the forest and kill Otta. His glowing blue eye reflects his growing concern for his friends. Ashura notices the distraction and gets annoyed that Hitoya is looking away from their dance. He gathers a massive amount of red energy, preparing a strike that will end the fight and everything around them. He mocks Hitoya, threatening to erase the weak little buddy he's so worried about. Hitoya's heart sinks as he realizes the true target of Ashura's attack, the forest where Otta is hiding. Desperate to protect his friend, Hitoya pushes his power to the limit and activates a defensive skill. A massive red beam of pure destruction tears across the battlefield, leaving a trail of fire and smoke. The energy is overwhelming, a level 120 strike that dwarfs Hitoya's current capabilities. Hitoya can only watch in horror as the lethal energy approaches the forest. The red light consumes everything. Otta's silhouette is briefly visible before disappearing into the explosion as Hitoya screams her name. Trembling and gasping for air, Hitoya is paralyzed by the sudden loss and the sheer cruelty of his opponent. Ashura looks down with a cold, mocking expression, telling Hitoya that he should never have stopped moving on a battlefield. With Hitoya's guard completely down, a follow-up strike sends him reeling in pain. His skeletal body, which previously seemed so durable, begins to crack under the pressure. In a quiet moment elsewhere, Elaine Chilin reflects on the reports that the dungeon boss's physical abilities are supposedly equal to a capital subjugation officer. But even that isn't enough to withstand the perfect blade of a high-level swordsman. Ashura's katana is a weapon that severs all things, including the hopes of the dungeon's inhabitants. Elaine knows the stakes. If the boss falls, the very core of the dungeon is at risk. The treasure will be stolen, and without its guardian, the forest mausoleum will inevitably collapse into nothingness. Hitoya lies motionless on the damp ground, his blue soul flame flickering weakly. Ashura scoffs, calling Hitoya an idiot for being shaken up just because a buddy got slashed. He steps past the broken skeleton, disappointed that his worthwhile kill turned out to be just another pathetic E-rank. "Guess I'll grab the treasure and head back," Ashura mutters, leaving the defeated boss behind as he heads for the dungeon's heart.